Hello, everyone, and welcome back to. This isn't Tub Takes, hold up. Well, welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic. We are introducing Regulation G back into the VGC metagame by talking about every single cover legendary that has ever been VGC legal. And we are going to be talking about their history, and we're going to be comparing their career arcs, their career trajectories to NFL quarterbacks. And I am joined by my two good friends and my biggest NFL fans. I'm joined by Jeremy Gross. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good.
You wanna
I
introduce
think,
yourself for those who don't know you?
yeah, Jeremy Gross, JZG on most online things. I was more active of a VGC player back in the day, but still around. I am one of the sports knowers around here, so
Hmm.
hence why I'm here.
And of course, I am joined by my almost co-host on Tub Takes. I'm joined by Nick Nails Navarre. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Have gotten really into the NFL over the past couple of years with the Lions finally giving
Yeah.
me some sort of
Mm.
payoff as a fan for
Yeah,
caring about the league. So
you could see
um,
my loyalties via even though this is a Nationals jersey. Nails and I are both long suffering NFL fans who finally
but
have
we're
good
good
teams to
now.
root for. We're good, yes. The Commanders are in the playoffs. It's astounding. They have won 11 games for literally the first time in my life.
Yeah. Wow.
No, it's a good time to be an NFL fan from DC or Detroit for the first time in
Ever,
I guess like
ever.
the early mid '90s.
Yeah, I mean, like the Commanders were last good like 4 years before I was born.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, both
Yeah.
fan bases are 30 years off. Anyways.
All right. Well, I'm sure. Don't worry. We got some Commander players. I know. We've got a lot of prep and a lot of players we're going to talk about today. Some Lions legends, some Commanders legends. But first, I don't want to assume that everyone knows everything about VGC because VGC is 17 years old as of 2025, which means that there are players in Masters divisions who were born after the first VGC World Championships. Fun fact. If that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what does. And yeah, so I want to give you a quick rundown of the history of VGC restricted formats where these legendary Pokemon were legal, so that you all have a little bit of understanding what we're talking about when we refer to some of these old formats and how some of these legendary Pokemon did in these old formats. And then, of course, we can start comparing these legendary Pokemon to these NFL quarterbacks. Last time when we did this in the NBA, which is so well received, I did a little NBA history one. Hopefully we don't have to do too much NFL history this time. But yeah, so starting things off, all the way back in 2010, that was the first time that they allowed these legendary Pokemon, and this was back in a very different time of VGC, notably because they just said you could use three restricteds on your team or four restricteds on your team, but you could only bring two of them to the battle. And so, very different from what we've seen more recently, where you can only use one or two. But also, there were other rules, like you could change the item slots around on your team, stuff like that. It was very interesting. There were also, I think, only 9 legal restricted Pokemon at the time, because this is only in Generation 4. And so you did not have a ton of Pokemon to choose from, given that you put 3 on your team normally. So Kyogre and Groudon really stood out at the time. Dialga and Palkia were almost always your third restricted, with a smattering of Ho-Oh and Lugia and Mewtwo saw some play, and Giratina I think saw some play. So a little bit of other stuff, but it was mostly those 4 restricteds that saw a lot of play. And then in Generation 5, when they released Reshiram and Zekrom and Kyurem, they said, we don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. It's not no one liked that. So they skipped the restricted format and never really gave those Pokemon a chance to shine. Instead, the next time we got to see these legendary Pokemon was during Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire in Generation 6, where they introduced Xerneas and Eviltal, who immediately made some metagame impact. Xerneas more than Eviltal for sure. And also
Yeah.
the primal versions of Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza, which were a dominating force for as long as they were in the game. What were you going to say, Jeremy?
I was just gonna say, yeah, Zern definitely had a bigger impact than Yveltal. I mean, like those four you mentioned were pretty much just the four big dogs of the format. Like almost all teams were some combination of those, like
My
two of those four. Yeah.
my favorite stat on this topic is that um, I'm pretty sure that every combination of Zern, Ray, Kyogre, and Groudon top cut Masters Worlds, and uh, there wasn't another restricted in top 16, I want to say was the stat.
That
Um,
sounds right. Like there was the Dialga Groudon team didn't get to top 16, right? Because that's
yeah,
the only team I can think of from that Worlds that wasn't two of these four.
I want to say
yeah.
Samped Dallas got top 16 with Eviltal, but I might be wrong about that. Um,
Maybe?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, he
yeah.
did.
but yeah,
Wait, no, he
definitely.
was. Yeah, okay, yeah, he was.
But it was definitely dominated by
Um,
those four restricteds. Um, we'll talk about those restricted
yes.
individually when a little later. But yeah, in 2019 they brought back. Oh, and I should note, 2010. None of us played in 2010, so we are going off
Yeah,
of
we are
we're going
purely
off of
going off history.
a Smogon thread that has some results and the world results pretty much exclusively to talk about that format. Whereas 2016, I think both of you guys played in 2016, and I was dabbling in VGC and actually quit because of 2016 because it was such a toxic format. And came back in 2017 to really start my VGC career. So we all have a little bit of experience in that.
2016 was how Nails and I met. We became friends after he beat me in top 8 affiliate regionals.
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
moving forward in the timeline, the next time we got to use restricted Pokemon was in 2019, which was actually the first time that they introduced series or regulations that we are so used to nowadays, where they rotate formats a little more often. At the start of the 2019 season, they said we were going to have 3 formats this year, not just one like we normally did, with Sun Series, Moon Series, and Ultra Series. Now, I have clumped Sun and Moon Series together. What they said was that in Sun Series, you could not use any Megas, any stronger forms like Primal Reversion or Ultra Necrozma. And in Moon Series, in Sun Series, you could also not use Z moves. In Moon Series, you could use Z moves, but you could still not use Megas. And then in Ultra Series, they released everything and said you can use Primals, you can use Ultra Necrozma, you can use the Rayquaza form, all those guys, and you can use Megas, and it was kind of no holds bar, which was very different, whereas Sun and Moon Series were very similar in terms of the teams that did well. Most of the cores that did well in Sun Series also did quite well in Moon Series, so I've kind of put them together in the timeline. But though that generation introduced Lunala, which saw immediate success, was everywhere in Sun Series, Moon Series, and was quite common in Ultra Series. Also introduced not Yveltal. Yveltal finally saw some play in those formats. And also introduced Solgaleo, which did see a little bit of play, not nearly as much. And, of course, introduced Necrozma, which has 2 forms, and then also Ultra Necrozma, which was very, very powerful in Ultra Series, which is the one time that it was legal.
Yep.
That was where, like, one of the first big Psy spam formats that I can remember was Necrozma Lele in Ultra Series.
Yep. Shout out to Tommy Cooling, by the way, who was really one of the first person people to popularize that archetype and also helped out a lot with this presentation. So big shout out to him.
I can't imagine how unplayable that format would have been if Expanding Force existed yet.
Bring back Ultra Necrozma.
We actually had good terrain setters, so it would have.
Like we did have Coca, we did have Feedy, but at the same time, like I don't want to imagine a world where Ultra Necrozma gets Expanding Force.
It's just 60% Finny usage, 60% Coca usage. It's like,
yeah, pretty much.
it's not fun, but we deal.
Yeah.
It's all right, because Indeedee would make it also quite strong with redirection on top of all that stuff.
Oh god. I've changed my mind about wanting Z moves back. They can never let those things back in the game. I never want to. No. They need to take E-Force from it if they put Z moves back in the game.
Yep. Moving forward in the timeline, the next time we got a restricted format was in 2021 during COVID, where we had Series 8 and then Series 11 later on, which was the exact same format. In 2021, we also had Series 10, and both of those were one restricted formats. In Series 8 and 11, you could use Dynamax Pokemon, and in Series 10, you could not use Dynamax Pokemon. This was the one time in Generation 8 where Dynamax Pokemon were banned. And so that was our introduction to Zacian and Zamazenta. Of course, Zamazenta did not see much play until later, but Zacian was by far the strongest restricted for all of those formats pretty much. And it also introduced us to Calyrex Ice and Calyrex Shadow Rider, which of course have been VGC mainstays ever since, although they did see a little less play in 2021. In 2022, when we got 2 restricteds, they were everywhere. And so those were the introduction to those guys. I guess I should mention in Gen 7, I forgot about this. Gen 6 introduced Zygarde, and we didn't really ever see it because it didn't have its big form. And then Gen 7, we got its other form, and so it also saw play there. So I guess that was also another restricted that I should throw out there. But yeah, Gen 8 introduced some of the behemoths of VGC in Zacian, Zamazenta, and the Calyrex brothers. And it also introduced the first time we ever had 1 restricted formats, which I mentioned. And then finally, we also had the very, very end of 2022 when we were moving on to getting ready for Scarlet and Violet. They also had a format where we were allowed to use mythical Pokemon. This is the only time that mythical Pokemon have ever been legal in VGC. By mythical Pokemon, I mean Pokemon like Magearna and Deoxys and Pokemon like that. Zarude, for example. But there were no official tournaments that were held in that. It was just a Battle Stadium ladder format. And so I do have a little Magearna on the slide, but we're not going to talk about that format too much because it never really had the chance to develop.
There wasn't much reason to play it, but
yeah.
I thought it was fun.
It was a fun concept, but yeah.
Just wait, we will get our mythical format coming up sometime next year. Just wait.
I mean, like they are kind of running out of formats, aren't they? Like there's only so much more we can do with these games, unless
I want to bring Shannon to a regional.
Hey, they could bring back 3 restricted. You never know.
Yeah,
we haven't had it in 15 years.
The really fun part about that format was that you could use more than 2 restricteds, and so even though you could use mythicals were not seeing a ton of play, but most teams were using 4 restricted Pokemon and an Incineroar on their teams, which was really fun.
Yeah,
and then
Incineroar, the true best restricted.
Last but not least, we had Generation 9, and we have had 1 restricted format so far, which is Regulation G. We might have another one upcoming. I wouldn't be surprised if we did. But we can talk about Regulation G, and of course that introduced 3 new restricted Pokemon, all of which have immediately impacted the metagame. We had Miraidon, which is of course coming off of a World Championship victory, Koraidon, which has not had as much success, but has definitely still been around, and Terapagos, which is also quite good in Regulation G, and one of the most complicated Pokemon ever made. And so they've continued to power creep these restricted Pokemon over and over again. And yeah, that's kind of the history of restricted formats in VGC. We're going to start from the very beginning, starting from Mewtwo, and we're going to talk all the way through the latest restricted Pokemon. And so when we talk about what Mewtwo did in 2010, I hope this gives you a little bit of context about what we're talking about. And with that, let's talk about what Mewtwo did in 2010. So Mewtwo is the OG restricted Pokemon, the only restricted Pokemon from Generation 1, and it has never really been good in VGC. Now, of course, VGC was not around in Generations 1 and 2. It only really started in Generation 4. And so it had some time to be the big bad, but before really competitive Pokemon took off. I know Nails is a big RBY player, so he will tell you all about how fearsome Mewtwo was in that format. But in 2010, the first time Mewtwo was legal, it did see a little bit of play. It did get a top 8 at Worlds, I believe. And then with the Mega forms that got released in Generation 6, it didn't see any play at all. It did see, I think I got 1 Day 2 finish at the North American Championships by Gary Chan in 2019. So it did see that 1 finish, but the Megas did not buff it enough, especially when Pokemon like Ultra Necrozma were around at the same time that were just a better Psychic type. And nowadays, you have no reason to use it over Shadow Rider, which I think outclasses it in literally every single stat that matters. For me, if you told me that your favorite restricted Pokemon was Mewtwo, I would assume that you have not played Pokemon since 2002. But, power to you. And I think my comparison for Mewtwo is Joe Montana, because Joe Montana is considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, certainly was the greatest player of all time. At least a lot of people would say that back in the day for a while. But honestly, I think he was overrated. He played in the West Coast offense, one of the first players to really play in that offense, which really prioritized short passes, so he didn't have to have to throw it downfield too often, really to throw a ton of challenging plays. He had one of the greatest wide receivers of all time on his team in Jerry Rice. And I don't think that he would stack up to modern quarterbacks in this era, but he still is one of the greatest. You still have to give him a ton of respect for what he did way back in the day. But yeah, I don't think he quite compares to some of the newer quarterbacks. What do you guys think?
I have
Yeah.
a fun Jerry Rice fact to tack onto this, which is he is the only non-kicker in the top 50 of all-time NFL scoring.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive.
Which is, that's ridiculously impressive. Because, I mean, you think of how many points a kicker accumulates all the time versus, a wide out, you catch touchdowns far less than a kicker kicks field goals or extra points. And he's somewhere in the 40s, but he is still in the top 50 of all time scoring and is the only non-kicker in there.
Yeah, he just had ridiculous career longevity.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the Montana slander that Adi was laying down is a bit too harsh.
I do agree on that. He was
Uh,
still this is kind of a formative era for the quarterback position. Like he definitely changed it.
yeah, like
Mhm.
Joe just was like he was very clearly the best guy in his era, and you can only compete against the players of your era. So uh, uh, much like Mewtwo was in RBY Ubers, Mewtwo just like sets up an amnesia. For those who don't know, it's like a double calm mind boost.
Right,
And
because
when you're working off of the highest stats in the game when it's not really close, it just runs away with games, and the entire RBY Ubers metagame is centered around dealing with Mewtwo and to a lesser extent Mew. But yeah, Mewtwo is the big bad on every team, and you run multiple Mewtwo checks
and
that
dark
can
types
respond
don't
to it.
exist yet. That's a critical thing to add. It's RBY. There's no dark type, and also special attack and special defense are the same stat.
Yeah, um, yeah. Like some other RBY mechanics, like crit rate is based on your base speed, and Mewtwo's the fastest mon in the game outside of Electrode.
It's very funny.
Like if you can explode a mon on Mewtwo, it is always worth it. You do that in a heartbeat, and um, it just it is RBY Ubers is Mewtwo's playground, and everybody else is there watching. And Joe Montana, from my understanding, that is kind of what the Niners were doing when he was in his prime, and even with he still had some good seasons with the Chiefs later as well. Just uh, was the best guy in his day. Um, but yeah, his game probably doesn't hold up today that well.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then moving on to the next legendary Pokemon on our list, we have. There we go. We have Lugia. So, Lugia, of course, one of the two restricted Pokemon coming out in Generation 2. And it has also pretty much never been good. It did get second at the World Championships in 2010, as I assume. I have not watched these sets, but I assume it was the third restricted that got brought less often on that team, next to, I believe, Kyogre and Groudon. It got top 16 at a French regional in Moon Series by Davide Carrere. In Sword and Shield, it got access to its hidden ability, which is multi-scale, and was once again a fringe viable. It got top 32 at Indianapolis regionals by John Hu. I know because I beat him and knocked him out of top cut and then bubbled that regional. And it also got top 16 at Vancouver regional. So there were two different tournaments where it was one win short of top cut. And it also made day two on a Compe Sableye team in Regulation G at a couple different cases in, I think, at Indy and then at Los Angeles regionals. It made day two as well. So somehow, some way, someone will try to make Lugia work and almost always succeed. But it happens every format, but it's not very good. It's just not very good. Lugia is like the perfect career backup quarterback where he's, you should never start with Lugia, but for some reason someone always has to play Lugia. And to me, that makes him my example of the ultimate backup QB is Brian Hoyer, who apparently was started an NFL game last year. I didn't know that. This is his first year out of the league.
He started for the Patriots, I think, who were going through it last year, to put it mildly.
I mean, he was in the league for 15 years, only 2 of which were as a starter. I think you can kind of pick basically any backup QB for this one, but yeah, he's the one that I thought of as the ultimate career backup QB. Who do you guys think Lugia is?
I think you nailed the story. But yeah, go ahead.
I think the story is good. I have a slightly different comp for this that comes courtesy of Tommy, and then there's kind of there's a quarterback I'm sure some of you were thinking of for the archetype of career backup. We'll get to him, but I want to focus in on the trying to make him work, and sometimes it does, but it doesn't. It's PJ Walker, who was extremely good in the XFL and has not really made it work in the NFL. Apparently, he's on the Seahawks right now, which I found out when I looked up his picture and saw it was a Seahawks uniform. Other than that, yeah, it's kind of has the track record of just you try to make him work. He's maybe good for a couple games. I think he kind of had a run in Carolina in 2022. Regardless, very good XFL quarterback who kind of the third restricted, just on the NFL bubble and never really kind of figured it out.
Yeah, both of those comps are pretty good. Yeah, it's pick your favorite underpowered quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, you said you had another comp as well, right?
Yeah, well, no, we will get to him on the next one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I see. So I'm looking at chat. By the way, if you have comparisons, we would love to hear them in chat. We are not always perfect at this. We put some thought into it, but I see Bruno in chat. Bruno is really excited for the stream, saying Jim Kelly, good old but not a winner. Don't worry, we've got a Jim Kelly comp coming up. Doug Flutie, Vinny Testaverde. That one I think is one of my favorite backups as well. I think Doug Flutie was a little too good, a little too memorable for Lugia, but that's just me.
I agree that Flutie was too viable.
Don't worry,
Lugia.
We got a lot of bad restricteds to go through. Lugia. All right. So moving on to the next one is Ho-Oh, which of course is also in Gen 2. It showed up in the first episode of the anime and then has basically never been heard from again. It was never viable in VGC, with the notable exception of 2019 Moon series, where it was maybe the 7th or 8th best restricted in that format, but it did win a regional coming out of nowhere. Alex Williams won Greensboro regional, and then as far as I can tell, it never did anything again. I do want to give a quick shout out to that one weird format where we could use as many restricted Pokemon as we wanted, and also mythicals, because Ho-Oh is actually really good into a lot of restricteds. It's just you never really want it to take up one of your restricted slots. It's just not nearly good enough, but it is quite good into Xerneas and Zacian and Calyrex Ice and Groudon, and also it's good into Magearna in that format. And so it did see a lot of play in Series 13 in that format, but that is of course not really a format that we have any results from, so it's hard to give it too much credit for that one. But yeah, if you can use 4 restricteds on your team, it is probably the 4th best restricted you can use. But yeah, so it won a regional. It won a regional coming out of nowhere and then never did anything again. Which I think is, my comparison is the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, who is Trent Dilfer, in my opinion. You know that Ravens team went 5 weeks without scoring an offensive touchdown the year they won the Super Bowl? I think that's crazy. They're really the Iowa Hawkeyes of the NFL that year, which is me. I'm a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan. He had 11 interceptions and 8 fumbles in 9 games. But they won a Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how bad you were because you won a Super Bowl. Just like Ho-Oh won a regional. They all count the same. So that's my take on Ho-Oh. What do you guys think?
So now is when I bring up the guy who we originally put in Lugia, but I thought was too good for Lugia and fits better here. Who is the archetype of the career backup who's still good but not quite good enough, and it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Sometimes we get Fitz Magic, sometimes we get Fitz Tragic. He's usually your backup, sometimes he's your starter. Sometimes you sign him as a bridge quarterback, you randomly go 8-8. Sometimes you sign him as a bridge quarterback and he suffers a career-ending injury 21 minutes into the season. Don't ask me about the 2021 Commanders. If you believe random sports talk radio conspiracy theories, he in fact suffered that injury on a water slide before the game. Forget that. That was funny. But he's never a long-term quarterback solution. He's capable of popping some crazy games every once in a while. Your team's not going to be awful if he's starting. Even the 2019 Dolphins were intentionally trying to be awful, and he still managed to go 5-11. there's a memorable game from that season, but they were playing Washington. They scored a touchdown to go down 1 with zeros on the clock. They lined up to go for 2, and I swear to this day they intentionally ran a failed 2-point conversion to lose. Like, it was just immediately like Fitz takes the snap, he looks left, he throws a check down to Kenyon Drake, the running back, who was like already has 2 guys on him, who just drops it. He's still the all-time leader in passing yards and passing touchdowns for a quarterback who has never made the playoffs.
That's crazy.
Which I think that is Ho-Oh, who has matchup into good restricteds, but you never actually want him starting for you.
That sounds about right. Nails, you got thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Ho's whole issue is that it's just a defensive restricted, and you want your restricteds to be carrying the offensive load. Um, and Ho, like I've often said about Ho that it's the best third restricted for any team because it just has really good matchups into a lot of the restricted months, but it doesn't make fast enough progress to keep up with the pace of games. So I really do like the Trent Dilfer comp. It's just very low powered offense, but it wins games, but it doesn't, like, you can do better, and nearly every successful team is going to do better, but like, it's fine.
Yeah.
They can get there.
I see a Fitz play mentioned in chat that I want to shout out, the Dolphins Raiders game where he like throws a 25-yard bomb down the sideline while he's getting face masked. It's incredible.
I really wish I could pull up these highlights and show them on stream, but it will get my video demonetized. I'm really sorry.
I asked. There was an extended rant later in this presentation where I wanted to play a highlight during it, but we don't get to.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from Ho-Oh. We got maybe the first good restricted really good restricted they ever made. Maybe a little overpowered. If they had kept restricteds at the power level of Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, these restricted formats would look very different. But instead, they, in Generation 3, decided to make Kyogre, and of course, we'll talk about Groudon in a little bit. Kyogre is every single format, literally every single format that Kyogre has been legal in. It has been incredibly good. This is maybe the first time, Regulation G being maybe the first time that it hasn't been incredibly good, like top 3 restricted in the format, and it's still like the 6th or 7th best restricted, and it's still like top cut the world championships. Like, it is still very much a factor in Regulation G. And I promise if we get a 2 restricted format, it's going to be even more common there. It is setting up Rain for itself to power up its own moves, and having a base 150 power spread move in Water Spout is absurd. The primal form they gave it, where now you can't even overwrite the weather manually or with a normal Pokemon, it has to be Groudon or Rayquaza, is also absurd, along with the extra stats that it gets. It is, I think, the best restricted Pokemon, and probably the best Pokemon of all time. And therefore, and also on top of all that, every single new format, it has to do something different. It has to find a new way to succeed. Like, it runs Calm Mind or Self-Fest now. It, of course, had the Primal form do well. It had, Life Orb or Mystic Water at times. Like, it always keeps changing the way that it plays as well.
Scarfogre has been very good at multiple points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's got so many different partners that you could talk about. I mean, it's just the best format. It's just the best restricted of all time. And so it's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. It's going to be Tom Brady. Yeah, I'm talking it up like it's Brady. Bruno got it. Yep. I wasn't hiding it. It's Tom Brady. It's just the GOAT. And I don't think there's any real 2 ways about it.
They've got the career longevity.
It's self-explanatory, yeah.
They've got the career longevity. They've got the same color scheme. Mm-hmm. They're just the same guy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I did really want to make it Dan Marino because it is a whale and he played on the Dolphins. But no, it's such a good Brady comp that I had to do it.
Yeah, there are better comps for Marino.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about Kyogre or Tom Brady? Can I get a big fuck Tom Brady actually?
Go blue.
Yeah, Nails has. I fuck Tom Brady. I have no such. I have no such agenda. The thing I remember most about Brady is that the 7-9 Commanders put up the most resistance to his Super Bowl run in Tampa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because somehow we got to host the playoff game because we won the NFC East.
Yeah. So I was growing up, I was a big Dolphins fan, and so I have always had to, basically my entire life I've had to deal with the Dolphins losing to Tom Brady. So yeah, I cannot stand this guy.
With Josh Allen.
Thank you, Aquamarine. Thank you, Bruno. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the fuck Tom Brady's. Let's go next. Next up, we have Groudon, who is of course Kyogre's biggest rival. And in many formats, it's only counterplay, right? Like in 2016 and 2019, when you had the Primal Kyogre and you literally could not overwrite it with manual weather like you can now with like a Sunny Day Tornadus or something like that. We have Koraidon now where you can use to overwrite its weather. Back then, you couldn't. You had to use either Rayquaza or you had to use Groudon. And Groudon not only turned off its weather, but actually with the Primal form, made it so it couldn't use water moves at all. So those 2016 to 2019 formats were these games of positional battles where you had to preserve your weather setter, and you basically had to have a weather setter, preserve your weather setter and position it perfectly to beat your opponent's weather setter, and that really was the name of the game. It has pretty much always been good. In 2010, it was one of the big two. 2016, 2019, it was dominant. In 2021, it saw a ton of play. It won. No, it didn't win Players Cup. It got second in Players Cup, but it was on the best team because the 2021 format, where it turns out the best Pokemon in the format was actually was Charizard, and Groudon was really good next to Charizard. That was funny. So that was why it was the best restricted or second best restricted back then. In 2022, we had Rinya Sun, which of course dominated most of that format and won 2022 NAIC that year. But it is kind of mid in Regulation G. It finally has some real competition between the general power creep that we have with Calyrex Ice doing quite well into it as a ground type, with Koraidon as another Sunsetter that you can use to contest it. It all of a sudden, the cracks are showing. Now, it is quite good to Miraidon, right? It is which just win the World Championship. So, and it has been seeing a little more play at the start of Regulation G Part 2 as a result of Miraidon being the dominant force right now in the format, and Calyrex Ice doing a little worse to start this format off. So, wouldn't surprise me to see Groudon somehow sneak back into one of the top tier restricteds once again. But as of now, it is maybe the 10th or 11th best restricted for the first time in its history. So it has fallen off a little bit towards the end of his career. But I think if Tom Brady is Kyogre and it's got to be its biggest rival, right? Groudon has to be Peyton Manning, who is another all-time GOAT. Kyogre's Tom Brady's only real competition for a lot of his playing career in the AFC. Peyton Manning certainly one of the GOATs, but not the GOAT. Also, did really well. Won a Super Bowl towards the end of his career, despite not being nearly as good towards the end of his career. Whereas Tom Brady was significantly better even until he retired. And that is kind of comparable to Groudon still being viable, still sticking around in this Regulation G, despite being power crept by things like Koraidon. But still sticking around, still being viable, but not being nearly as good as it used to be. What do you guys think?
No notes. I think you nailed it.
Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, much like Brady, it's a pretty self-explanatory comp. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, in that case, let's move on to I think everyone in chat got that one as well. So now we can move on to someone that has a little more discussion. I think Kyogre and Groudon kind of fell into place really nicely, but Rayquaza we do have a little bit of an argument over. So I said that let's talk about Rayquaza's history in VGC. Rayquaza kind of sucks. Its base form was not good in 2010 when you could basically use anything. People still didn't use Rayquaza. But then they made Primal Rayquaza in 2016 and 2019. It was everywhere. It was once again one of the best ways to overwrite weather with Delta Stream. You didn't have to Mega it, and it counted as your Mega Evolution, so you didn't have to Mega Evolve it to get Delta Stream if you didn't want to. You could also Mega Evolve something else and just use it as a base form. So it had that flexibility as well. Dragon's Ascent is a crazy signature move. And it was really good next to Kyogre for basically all of its existence. It's basically only good next to Kyogre. In fact, there was some Xerneas Rayquaza teams and some Groudon Rayquaza teams that did see some play in 2016 with Xerneas and 2019 with Groudon. But really, you're using it to beat Groudon and then let your Kyogre win the game. And also use priority to kind of pick off opponents' Pokemon as well. And so, yeah, that's basically it. And then once it lost its primal form, it has basically not seen any play whatsoever since then. In Regulation G, there was some experimentation with Terra Normal next to Chien-Pao as like sort of Dragonite, but like you could just use good Pokemon instead. Namely, like you could just use Dragonite if you really wanted to. I mean, it's still there.
It's Dragonite. It's never restricted. Yeah.
So yeah, Rayquaza had a couple years where it was really, really good, but did not really see the continuation. And so I said that he is Matt Schaub. That was my comparison. I know y'all have a little bit of a debate there, but Matt Schaub was a career backup or a backup to start his career. He started for the Texans for a couple years. He led them to his first ever winning season in 2009. He led the league in passing yards in 2009. In 2012, he again went to the Pro Bowl for the second time. He led the Texans to a 12-4 record. He had this 4-year span where he was like legitimately one of the better starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And then he went 3-8 as a starter for the next 8 years of his career. He had a huge drop off after his best season in 2012. And yeah, I feel like that's pretty much Rayquaza, where not really expected to do much, did really well for like 3 or 4 years, and then fell off a cliff and was basically never heard from again. But what do you guys think about Rayquaza?
I think you're really underselling how good Rayquaza was at its peak. 2016 and 2019 Ray. 2016 Ray was just the most raw power you could concentrate in one Pokemon. It ate your Mega Slot and a restricted slot, so the overall team might be a little bit better if you had like two restricteds and then a third Mega.
Yeah.
But Rayquaza's power level was just it was very clearly the best mod. It was banned from singles Ubers and necessitated the creation of Anything Goes because it was just overwhelming in singles Ubers, and they hadn't had to ban anything before Ray, and Ray just broke the game. Matt Schaub just is not on the same level. But I do agree, Rayquaza is currently garbage, currently an unplayable restricted, just cannot hang in the... Ray can't hang in the league right now. And so my comp for Rayquaza is Aaron Rodgers. A guy at his peak was very clearly one of the best. Had the 15-1 season with the Packers. I think they had one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And just for a span of a few years, most of a decade, was one of the most elite players at the position. But yeah, no, has completely fallen off a cliff recently, and so that has to be accounted for too. And I think Rayquaza just has the perfect career arc. Rodgers and Rayquaza both have one ring. And honestly, I hadn't noticed this, but Rayquaza has a Packers uniform on.
Yeah, he kind of does.
So, that's true. Got that going for him as well.
Now,
also, it kind of completes the trio of 2010s quarterbacks with Brady and Eli, with Peyton, with the weather trio.
Yep.
Now, I will push back a little bit because I think Rayquaza in singles is obviously very strong. In doubles, I don't think it was... Obviously, 2016 Rayquaza was really good. 2019, it suffered from Ultra Necrozma being really, really good into it. And so it only really saw play, and in both those formats, 2019 at least, next to Kyogre. In 2016, it saw some play next to Xerneas, but I think that Kyogre kind of carried Rayquaza. I really do. I think it's a little overrated because it's so reliant on single target moves.
Maybe.
X-Ray won an Internet in 2019.
So Aaron Rodgers also extremely reliant on a single target.
That's true.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'll take that. No, I like it. Now,
X-Ray won UIC in 2019.
It did do that, and then no one ever used X-Ray ever again that format. But that's true. It did. That was the second tournament of the format. It won that. Yeah.
I do want to add one note to the thing Nail said about like the amount of power you can stick into one slot, because a challenge a lot of people ran into with team building at Ultra Series is like you only have so many item slots and so many team slots to stick in like two restricteds, a Mega, and a Z move if you don't at least get two of them into the same Pokemon. So the fact that you can, you can put your Mega onto, this is the only opportunity to put your Mega onto a Rel unless you run Mewtwo. But this is the only opportunity to put your Mega onto a restricted.
Yeah.
And, a lot of restricted had viable Z moves. So, of course, Necrozma, Ultra Necrozma had to hold the Z Crystal in order to be Ultra Necrozma. And of course, Lunala usually ran Lunalium, etc. But yeah,
Right.
it's important role compression that allows you to run more Mons, essentially.
Yeah. It also led to the very interesting dynamic where, like, for example, Wolf won 2019 North American Championships with Rayquaza and Mega Gengar. And so you had to pick which one you wanted to Mega in any given game. And so that was another, like, very interesting dynamic with it that, I don't know, it's really hard to compare a QB to that dynamic, but that did add to it where it also meant that you couldn't necessarily run a second Mega as effectively because you had a Rayquaza on your team. So that was another.
At the same time, though, base form, Dragon Ascent, and E-Speed went pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's still ultimately a flying type close combat, and it has 150 attack in base form.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know what? I did forget that it won both internats in Ultra Series because it did kind of fall off towards the end of Ultra Series, but it did win both internats towards the start of Ultra Series. So it was a dominant force there. So now the real question about the Rayquaza and Rogers comp is that do you think that Rayquaza is an anti-vaxxer?
Like probably. Like I don't know. He's like anytime Kyogre and Groudon get into a fight, he breaks it up, and so I don't know what that has to do with anti-vax.
Yeah,
It's just like
I don't know.
taking a strong stance against something that other people are doing.
I was trying to make some sort of Deoxys Space Fires comp, and it kind of flamed out in my mind.
I like your angle though. Like, there's a good joke in there somewhere.
Somewhat, yeah. It will take me more time than we have now to think of it. There's something in there somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. Rayquaza, I don't know. 5G waves, that doing anything for you guys?
He lives on a giant tower.
Lives in a giant tower. We'll workshop it. We'll get there.
Rayquaza has airlock, and Aaron Rodgers always performed well in bad weather in Green Bay. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Always performed well in bad weather, but I still maintain they missed out on going to 2 Super Bowls later in his Green Bay arc because they kept running into the most bad weather optimized team in football, the early 2020s Niners, outdoors in Wisconsin in January, and lost because the Niners attempted like 3 passes and just ran for 400 yards.
Was pretty funny. Mm-hmm. Love watching the Packers lose.
All right.
Yeah, and now he's on the Jets and terrible.
Yep.
Worse than Zach Wilson, which is really saying something.
Which is
Tyrod Taylor's the best quarterback on that roster right now.
Just also saying something. Which is for what it's worth, pretty comparable to Rayquaza nowadays.
We'll tolerate no Tyrod Taylor slander.
Tyrod Taylor is Dragonite. We don't have Dragonite in this slide, but Tyrod Taylor is Dragonite. You should just be running Tyrod Taylor on your NFL team right now over Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and then you get to spend your money on a real restricted Pokemon.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. Moving on to the next restricted, we have Dialga, the first restricted in Generation 4. Dialga has been weirdly good throughout VGC's history, despite never really being all that good. I said that a couple times already, but I really mean it for Dialga. It was probably the third best restricted in 2010 behind Kyogre and Groudon. It paired quite well with both of those guys, and I guess I don't know much about that format, but I guess it paired quite well, or it targeted down some of the non-restricted Pokemon quite well. I don't know why people use Dialga, but they did. And then Dialga Kyogre was a real team, and in 2016, I think Dialga Groudon was a real team in 2016. Neither of which were very good, but they saw some play. I guess I'm going to ask you guys. Do you guys remember Dialga in 2016? It was around, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was always kind of like restricted. I guess it was restricted to 6, and Yveltal was restricted 5.
yeah. Yeah, no, like Sunny D popped off at the World Championships.
Yeah.
Like it was not like it was one team that a group of players, including Tommy, uh, just put together before Worlds, and I think a couple of them made D2 with it, which was
It was a pretty good team.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
it was a good team.
It had a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so Dialga's vibe is it's always more defensive focused and support focused. Controls the pace of the game, but doesn't put up gaudy numbers. Um, and like yeah, just lets
Mhm.
its defense carry it.
And has a ring.
It,
Does have a ring.
yeah, I guess it did win. It did win Worlds in 2010, so it does have a ring. And yeah, so in Sun Series, it saw some play as well. Dialga Kyogre cut some regionals, which was interesting. Again, that team did not age well at all back then. But I think it got some cuts at the very start of the format. And then yeah, in 2021, again, Dialga saw some play. It was very common next to Fake Tears Grimmsnarl, and it was it was the team that if you really wanted to Dynamax your restricted Pokemon, so you wouldn't really Dynamax your Groudon or your Kyogre or your Zacian very often, or your Calabrexes very often. So if you really wanted to Dynamax your restricted, Dialga with Max Quake, Max Steel Spike, and Max Wormwind was a very good pick. And so we saw it with Fake Tears Grimmsnarl, and it saw a decent amount of play. And it also saw some play in 2022, including Dev Katesh, who beat me at the World Championships en route to cutting the World Championships with Dialga Yveltal, which is not a combination we really saw at all until he used it in 2022. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, it got an Origin form, which theoretically buffs it, but neither has seen really any play in Regulation G. I thought it might see play in Regulation G as a partner to Ursaluna with Telepathy, its hidden ability, but that has not really manifested at all. I think it might see some play in a dual restricted format, but I really think it needs a second restricted to justify using. It's just not strong enough on its own. But having a move like Trick Room is pretty good as a support Pokemon, support restricted Pokemon. But yeah, overall, like that is pretty successful, right? Like that's not the worst restricted we're going to talk about by far.
It's a lot more successful than you would expect, honestly, given its reputation. Does the Origin form buff it? That was the first thing that popped in my like. Does it get enough to be worth losing the item slot? Because it doesn't get much stat wise, does it?
I don't know. I don't think it does.
I'm looking it up in the Showdown Builder right now because I do not have that committed to memory.
I do not know Dialga's stats.
I think it goes to base 100 speed, which is actually like kind of a detriment if you were in the Trick Room set.
Yeah, you're a Trick Room setter. Like
it just it's the same stats as Dialga, but it trades 20 attack and gets 20 extra SPDF.
Okay, so absolutely not worth it.
Yeah,
it's not worth your item slot, but it is a strict upgrade, and
it's an upgrade. It is not a big enough upgrade to lose your item over. Yep. Oh, do you still does the globe still give you the adamant orb move stab boosts?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that is something at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it gets like it's an item that you might consider running in Dialga anyways, and you also get 20 extra SPDF out of it. It's it's like a decent deal. It's probably not worth your item because it's got like a bunch of supporty items at once because it's a support. And
it's probably not good enough to run in a one restricted format.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not a carry for the team in any way. Like if you need Dialga to carry your team, you're in a really bad spot.
Yes.
Yep. And speaking of players that you don't want to carry your team, I got Dialga as Joe Flacco, who to me, when I think of Dialga, I think of him as like the 10th best restricted in any given format. And when I think of Joe Flacco, I think he is pretty consistently like the 10th best QB in the league in any given year. He has a Super Bowl championship, just like Dialga has a World Championship. And after 16 seasons, he is still chugging along, just as mediocre as ever. He has the most passing yards for any QB to never make the Pro Bowl, and he's unlikely to change that. And yeah, like I think I like the comparison. What do you guys think?
What's funny is he did kind of carry the Browns to the playoffs last year, but I mean, you could argue that their defense was very good, and you could argue just not being Deshaun Watson also carries you to the playoffs.
I would argue Myles Garrett carried the Browns to the playoffs.
Flacco did nearly trash this comp by losing to the Giants last Sunday.
Yeah, he did,
He
but that's
did.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Flacco carried by defense
Mhm.
is serviceable. Dialga will always be serviceable and will always not be the strongest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That sounds about right.
And Joe Flacco is just perfect count for that.
Yep. And yeah, also the right era too. Competed against the Brady, Manning, Aaron Rodgers type generation. And just a little later, a little after those guys, and yeah, I think it works quite well. And so,
Yep.
moving on to the next quarterback on our list, we got. Excuse me, not next quarterback, next restricted Pokemon on our list. Really, they're the same thing if you think about it. We got Palkia. So Palkia was also saw a decent amount of play in 2010. It was on the world's runner-up team. It also saw some play in 2019 Moon Series, although I wouldn't say it was all that good in that format. It did get to click a big Waterium Z if it wanted to. I know I brought it to Toronto Regionals, but I did not do well at that Toronto Regionals. Wolf brought it to Dallas Regionals that year, and he had a one of the best. Like, if you want to learn how to prep for a VGC tournament, you should watch Wolf's series on how he prepped for the 2019 Dallas Regionals. That really helped me learn to prepare for VGC tournaments more effectively. So I think that is, and that also was part of the reason for me using Palkia and doing very poorly. So maybe don't take inspiration from that part of it, but take inspiration from those videos. It was basically unviable up until throughout its lifespan up until 2022, where it was the perfect partner for Calyrex Ice. It was a water type to hit Incineroar, and it could set up Trick Room, so Calyrex Ice could safely sweep. And it got top 4 at Worlds that year from Paul Chua. It was, I think, Palkia Calyrex Ice was undisputably one of the 3 strongest teams or 3 strongest archetypes in that format. Of course, I think it was originally made by Maluka. I know me and Alex built the Gothitelle version of the team that got really popular for a little bit. Also top cut the World Championships. In Pokemon Legends, it got another form, just like Dialga with the Origin form. And Palkia's main niche, I think, is that it is a restricted Trick Room setter with telepathy and with as a water type. Like, that is quite strong. It's good into Kyogre, but that I don't think it wants the speed boost that the Origin form gives it. So I don't think the Origin form is a buff at all. Whereas Dialga, I think you can really justify it. So yeah, just like Dialga, I think in a 1 restricted format, it's not especially viable. But in a 2 restricted format, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some play. Anything you guys want to add about the history of Palkia in VGC?
I mean, it's another one of these supporty, defensively sound restricteds
Mhm.
who aren't going to carry a game on its own, but can absolutely contribute to a winning team comp.
And at the same
Um,
time, like it has more of a credible damage threat. Of the supporty restricted, I think like outside maybe Lunala's Z move, like it kind of has the biggest, sort of, I guess, keeping the defense honest would be the football analogy here. It has a deep
yeah,
ball basically.
yes. Palkia can take it and hit a shot, um, and but it's not going to be consistently DPSing and matriculating the ball down the field just by itself. It needs some help
Mm-hmm.
to get all the way there.
And
Um,
speaking of needing some help, that is kind of the basis of my comparison. I think he is Russell Wilson. We had a question about Russell Wilson comps, and this is my Russell Wilson comp. And in particular, I think of 2013 Russell Wilson because he was really good at handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, which to me is a lot like setting up Trick Room for Calyrex Ice. And yeah, what do you guys think?
And
yeah,
I think that also works. That's why I made the deep ball comp, because like Russ has a cannon, and that's like his biggest throwing the ball strength is deep ball is really 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 good. And so as I said, he keeps the defense honest. You can't stack the box assuming they're gonna hand it off, because he's gonna fake the handoff, run RPO, and chuck it 40 yards downfield.
yeah. I just agree with all of this. Nothing else to elaborate on. I think your points are justified.
Yeah, I see Palkia has a long neck and therefore is Davis Mills in the chat. And I see Nerd of Now point out that yeah, Bingji did I think cut a Ultra Series regional with Wateri and Palkia as well. So I guess it did see a little bit of play in Ultra Series as well. But yeah, not super common back then. Yeah, that's Palkia for you. And there's your Russell Wilson comp. I saw people asking for that one. Um, and moving on to the last of the Generation 4 restricteds. It is Giratina or Giratina. It's Giratina, right?
Giratina.
I have no idea. I say Giratina, but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. People, I don't get it, man.
I could not tell you what the canonical pronunciation is,
Me
Well,
either. It's
and,
Giratina.
and it will never be on stream for us to find out.
so true. People really got annoyed at my Armor Rogue pronunciation. So, Armor Rouge, which one? I forgot which one I said and which one people were mad at.
Armor Rouge is correct. I don't, and even if it's not correct, I don't care. It's Armor Rouge.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate it. Anyways, Giratina, low key was a menace in 2010. It didn't do that well at the World Championships, but when I was looking through like old Smogon threads, I did see a lot of people using it. So it was a pretty common third restricted Pokemon. And I can see it because it has Levitate and it has some typing that is quite good into Groudon and Kyogre. So I can definitely see it being okay in that format. But since then, basically never been used. It has an interesting typing, but I think the fact that the Levitate version requires an item and it is a defensive restricted, so it really wants like a different item, I think has made it a lot worse. I also think it has like missed its shot at being better because when Dialga and Palkia got their so-called buffs with their origin forms in Legends Arceus, Giratina was, spoilers, he was the big bad in that game. They could have given it another form. They could have given it a a little bit of a buff, maybe a signature move, something like that. But instead, they didn't. They just didn't give it anything in that game. And so it probably will never be good in VGC, which is really disappointing because it is one of the coolest Pokemon to play in game. I still very fondly remember going to the Distortion World and fighting it in Pokemon Platinum version. I still really enjoyed having that Giratina fight in Legends Arceus is one of the toughest battles in game history in Pokemon. And so I think back very fondly for this Pokemon lore wise, but it has just never been good in VGC, and I think they've missed their chance to make it good. And so yeah, I called it the biggest biggest bust in restricted history, which in my opinion makes it the same as one of the biggest busts in QB history, which is David Carr, who is the number one pick in 2002. His rookie season as a starter, he got sacked 500,000 times, and then I probably got a ton of CTE, and never really had a shot with a competent offensive line. And now I think a lot of people look back at him and just say, wow, he's a really big bust. But I think he never really had the opportunity to succeed. What do you guys think Giratina is?
So I'm going to read directly from a Pokedex entry here. This Pokemon is said to live in a world on the reverse side of ours, where common knowledge is distorted and strange. So, we must ask ourselves, what quarterback makes all knowledge of football distorted and strange? Who can throw for 497 yards and 4 touchdowns against the top defense in the NFL and still manage to lose because he threw 3 interceptions, including two pick sixes? Who can throw, the only quarterback in history to throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in one season? Jameis Winston.
Yeah. Giratina is the chaos Pokemon.
Mhm.
Jameis Winston is the chaos quarterback. I agree with this 100%.
Yeah.
Uh,
This was like one of the first comps that came to my mind of like any restrict.
Like Giratina is not a good enough VGC Pokemon to like actually make comps based on playstyle, and even when it is, it's just trying to do silly things with its typing. Like it doesn't have the kit to actually pull off like something that could be a dominant like metagame threat. It just has too many weaknesses and
Yep.
doesn't do enough damage. So we went for flavor on this one.
Yeah, we absolutely and yeah.
And
The
yeah,
thing is, like, Jameis is capable of having dominant games, and then there are also games where he turns the ball over 6 times.
yeah.
Sometimes
Like
those are the same
Giratina is
game.
occasionally going to have some really good matchups, or
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 really good matchups. Like I think right now in Reg G, Zamazenta teams really struggle to deal with it because it just sits there and sets up calm lines, and they're not really prepared to deal with that. But like it just does not have a viable like all around matchup spread, um, and yeah, neither does Jameis. But he can do really funny stuff in like
He can, in
a
fact,
game or
do
two
really
every
funny
season.
things. The quarterback that makes me laugh the most watching him play. Absolutely.
Yep.
Do you
Always a joy to watch.
He'll throw 6 touchdowns and 2 of them will be to the defense.
Yep.
do you think that Origin Form's wings kind of look like crab legs to you? I feel like they kind of look like crab legs.
Yeah, like snow crabs. You can see it.
Yeah.
Well, but
Where do you think
yeah,
where do you think
can see
Giratina got those from? You know, like it all makes
Uh-huh.
sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
I just remembered the Jameis crab leg thing. It was like so far back in my memory.
Yeah. That's still the first thing I think of when I think of, that's my introduction to Jameis Winston. So that's still the first thing I think of.
Yeah, the first thing I think of is going 30-30 in one of his last years with the Bucks, and he got to his 30th interception by throwing a walk-off pick six on the last game of the season in overtime, which is just incredible.
Um, is he? Where's he? Is he at the Saints right now? Oh, he's at the Browns right now.
He's
He's with the Browns.
they benched him. They should have been starting him. They honestly, actually, no. The team is so bad right now that they probably would not be a playoff team if they had just started him instead of Watson at the start of the year. They should have started him instead of Watson at the start of the year.
Deshaun Watson was really bad.
Really, really bad is underselling it. I mean, like
He was the worst quarterback in the league at the start of the season.
possibly worst quarterback, like one of the worst quarterback seasons in history.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't
At least
worry.
while we've had modern stats. Yeah.
I know restricted people were saying that about too. Anyways, let's move on to the next restricted Pokemon. We got Reshiram, which is of course the first of the Gen 5 restricted Pokemon. Like I said, there was no restricted format back in VGC in Generation 5, so it never really got its time to shine. It was a niche pick in 2022. Obviously never saw it play in 2016 or 2019. Did it see play in 20? I feel like I remember it vaguely in like Sun or Moon series for one tournament.
Yeah, it was on a Groudon team, right? Was it Philly?
Yeah, it was a little bit viable next to Groudon, but it just undersped Xerneas, and so Xern got to set up Geomancy. It just really,
And it's a special attacker, so it gets +2 spit F, and that matters.
yeah. It, its calcs are kind of funny, but it's just never the strongest thing you can be doing.
It does. Blue Flare and Sun is a funny damage button, but it just doesn't do enough.
Yep. And so the first time it was really ever, I'd say viable, I would not call it viable in that format, was 2022, where it saw some play next to Calibrex Ice. It got top 8 at the European Championships, and then it got second, and I think also got top 8 at the Indianapolis Regionals next to it. It had a lot in common with Palkia, in that it didn't learn Trick Room like Palkia does, but it did have the perfect typing to scare off Zacian, and it was also a restricted that could Dynamax really effectively, and Dynamax into Zacian teams, click its big fire moves, click dragon moves like Max Wormwind, and then just do a lot of put Max Quake as well with Earth Power to scare off Incineroar. And I think, however, despite that, as the format progressed, Palkia was generally considered better. After that Indianapolis Regionals, Reshiram never really had any big successes, although it did see play here and there. Now that Koraidon exists and has basically the same typing, I know Koraidon is a fighting type, but its longest terrestrialization is available. It's a fire type. Koraidon is basically the same typing and is just better. So I think Reshiram is going to be a lot harder to justify using unless it gets a buff. Maybe if we get Agent 5 remake in 2026 or whatever, we will see a Reshiram boost. Oh my god, it's like 2027, 2028. We gotta wait so long before this guy's viable. Just forget it exists.
When Legends Kyurem comes out, and we get the complete dragon.
Yep. Anyways, maybe it'll get a new form and it'll have a chance again. But for now, it is pretty much unviable, except for one little stint in 2022 where it was semi-viable and like weirdly viable. My comparison, as a result, is Taylor Heineke, who is probably going to be a career backup.
Commander's Legend
In 2021 and 2022. He was weirdly good. I was looking up like advanced stats, and he had 2021 season, he was like no, I shouldn't say one of the better QBs in the league, but like a top half QB in the league.
I had to watch that game to see what to tell you.
Like I did not realize that he was actually like a pretty good quarterback in that year. And he will probably never be a starter in the NFL ever again. I think that is like, but like weirdly good for a year is about as good as you're going to get for a Rushy Ram comparison. And so I think he kind of followed the same career arc. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I like the comp. Let me tell you, like, the 2020 Heineke run was magic. Like, we made the playoffs as a 7-9 team because the entire NFC East was a disaster. He put up more resistance to Tom Brady on his way to a Super Bowl than Drew Brees and Patrick Mahomes combined. It was fun. It was really fun. And then I had to watch him for another 2 seasons. And let me tell you, not good. Good rusher, cannot throw the ball. So my comp is a guy who's pretty much the same arc, but has a higher high in the Minneapolis Miracle, which is Case Keenum. Like better overall average, has a bigger moment. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same arc. Like he's a career backup. He had one weirdly good year with the Vikings.
Yeah.
I'm good with the Kingdom comp as well. I think it's you guys nailed it.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. It is fun to see. I think one of the coolest things looking back at 2022 was that Rushy Ram was like viable. Like it's just not something that you would ever expect to say. And I think that there's a few different quarterbacks that you could plug in and say, yeah, this backup QB, this career backup had one really good year. I think there were a couple other comps that we were debating back and forth about for this sort of same vibe. But I think yeah,
you
like
could throw Kirk Cousins in there.
Yeah, the problem is Kirk is washed now.
Rushy Ram is washed now.
It's funny. It's funny to imagine like the alternate history where like Drew Bledsoe never suffers that injury, and like Tom Brady might be in this category instead of.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. We got next up. Whoop, that's not what I wanted to click. Here we go. Next up, we got
Jimmy G. I don't know.
Yeah. No. Next up, we got Zekrom, which is of course the other legendary Pokemon. Well, I guess there's 2 restricted Pokemon. This is the other part of the duo, the Yin and Yang duo from Generation 5. And Zekrom has literally never been good in VGC. There was one that made Day 2 Worlds in 2022. I do not know how it made Day 2 Worlds in 2022, but it did. It got top 64 or top 128, something like that, so not super good. It shares the same typing as Miraidon now. So it will probably never see play. I know Marco Fierro is streaming with it. I know he said he thinks it has some potential, but it is just worse Miraidon. Surely it's just worse Miraidon. Why would you ever use Zekrom?
It's Tailwind.
I guess it doesn't get Tailwind. I guess that is a reason to use it over Miraidon, who just has a base 135 speed stat, so doesn't need Tailwind.
Yeah, it has Tailwind, yeah.
It just... Yeah. All right. So I forget. I had a comp, and you guys were like, "No, I think you guys had a better one." So I'll let you guys talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, 8-100 zeros Kyogre. Like, behold Eli Manning. Like that's just.
Yep.
This maybe is Eli slander because he did win 2 Super Bowls, but yeah.
Yeah.
We just had to have a Kyogre killer, and that is just Eli. It's too funny to not go for, and
it is.
It is a little disrespectful to Eli Manning, who is a significantly better quarterback.
As we were leading into this slide, I had the idea that this should be Daniel Jones because he kind of looks like Eli, but is significantly worse.
I was trying to figure out if any like shitty NFL QBs looked just like another better NFL QB. Because it just looks like Miraidon, right? It's like knockoff Miraidon. I couldn't find any at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I do think this is like disrespectful to Eli Manning, who is of course better.
It's Eli slander, but it's too good of a bit.
It is too good of a bit. I really wanted to make Tom Brady Xerneas because then Eli Manning could be Solgaleo, because I think that they literally made Solgaleo to beat Xerneas. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Eli Manning only exists to beat Tom Brady.
Yeah. The problem is Zern doesn't have a ring. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get to Zerd. We had a better comp for Zerd, and so we had to find a worse comp for Solgaleo, sadly. But also, I think Solgaleo is like an Eli Manning caliber restricted, right? So that's also why I really like that.
Eli was originally on the Solg slide, but then we realized that we kind of thought it had to be Zekrom.
It had to be Zekrom.
Solgaleo. I mean, I guess you could like Terra Electric Wild Charge to beat Kyogre, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there's just not many. Zekrom's like the only mon that actually has a good Kyogre matchup out of all the restricteds. Like, there's a lot of dragons that can tank an Origin Pulse, but none of them actually really do that much back to Kyogre. Outside of Miraidon, but it's just yeah.
And Miraidon also doesn't get hit by the Origin Pulse in the first place.
That's true.
Because it's just faster.
What do you mean? The restricted with the good Kyogre matchup is Urshifu Water, right? The 70% usage Pokemon.
This is a 2 restricted format, but your second restricted is always Urshifu.
Yeah. God, I don't want to play Reg G. All right, moving on.
I feel you, man. Hey, on the plus side, like if they're gonna Darkrai this thing next generation, like they're gonna nerf Unseen Fist, they're gonna nerf its moves, they're probably gonna take like 20 attack from it.
Yeah,
and
I hope so.
Never see it again.
Yeah, I hope it goes down in history with like Dark Void Smeargle in terms of like. What
they really did not have to do Darkrai like that, honestly. Like, all they had to do was lock Dark Void to Darkrai. They did not have to make it the least accurate status move in the game.
They made it worse than Hypnosis.
They did.
In singles, Darkrai just doesn't run Dark Void. It's so funny.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what they're going to do. 25% damage through Protect for Unseen Fist. Which is weird because we had that before we had Unseen Fist, and yet they decided, sure, let's make it do full damage. What could go wrong?
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the next legendary Pokemon. The last part of the trio in Generation 5 is Kyurem, which of course has 2 forms. It can base form Kyurem is basically not a restricted. It technically is, but obviously it is just weaker than it. I mean, it is worse than Baxcalibur. Is really what it is. It's a base 600 stat total Pokemon, right? So not really a Pokemon you should consider using, but it does have 2 other forms, which are Kyurem White and Kyurem Black, which are, of course, when it's combined with Zekrom and Reshiram. And much like Zekrom, Kyurem Black has never, ever seen play. It has just never, ever been good. I think it top cut 1 Australian regional in 2016, which should tell you everything you need to know about its viability. But Kyurem White has been good. Kyurem White, I think, was okay. You have to tell me if Kyurem White ever saw play in 2016. I don't remember it ever seeing play in 2016.
It did. It
sure.
was
so. Yeah, Kyurem White's shtick in 2016 was it would be played on Gravity Sableye teams that would let it spam its 100% accurate Blizzard, and like you'd play it with Primal Groudon, and it had a good enough speed tier to outspeed both primals. It's got 170 special attack. So it was weirdly viable in 2016. You had to give it a lot of support, but it was kind of it was kind of capable of paying off that support if you played in a weird way. It was never going to be like the strongest thing you could do, or even like one of the 5 strongest things you could do, but it was like okay Pokemon that you were playing. But yeah, it did not look like the games anyone else was playing. Which is kind of what Kyurem's done throughout the years as well. I don't remember if it was played at all in Ultra Series. I don't think it was.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And same for Dynamax formats. I kind of tuned out of those.
It was good in Dynamax formats. I'll get to that.
Okay,
but
you can take that.
Using the Dynamax formats because it's just a pile of stats, and it has some of the max moves. Like it has max Quake. It has max Flare because it has Fusion Flare.
And notably, it can. So yeah, in Dynamax, it was one of the just like Dialga. It was a restricted Pokemon that could Dynamax and do a lot of damage itself. Unlike Dialga, it lost to Zacian, which made it a lot worse, and you had to use stupid shit next to it. Like, people were using, in 2022, Imprisoned Zacian on their Kiram White teams so that you could beat opposing Zacians with your Kiram White. That's how bad it was. But it did see play because it click Max Quake, which does threaten opposing Zacians. It has a massive special attack stat. I think it's a base 170 special attack stat, if I recall correctly.
170. Mm-hmm.
So it does a lot of damage. Max Wormwind is really good, and Max Hailstorm meant that it could set up hail for itself and KO things through Focus Sash, and also disrupt all the Groudon and Kyogre teams that were floating around. And so, yeah, when you can set up hail for yourself on the last turn of your Dynamax and then click Blizzard after you finish Dynamaxing, that's a lot better than being forced to use Gravity next to it or using a Ninetales next to it or something like that. And so did actually see a decent amount of play in 2021 and 2022. I didn't really know how to approach this one because it's just I don't know, it's a pretty unremarkable Pokemon that was, I guess, fringe usable for a couple years. But my comp was Max White, who is the former Jets QB and current third string QB on the Bills. Because his name is White. His name is White. He's Kieran White. I mean, what else do you want to say? He's Kieran White. He's also freezing his ass off sitting on the bench in Buffalo right now, which is what you do if you're Kieran.
He's the third stringer behind Trubisky.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a job, certainly.
Yeah. And he also his most notable accomplishment is he won the MVP, the Nickelodeon Valuable Player, which does sound like something that Kiram would win. It is the like casual fans' favorite restricted, I think. So I think that
and did better with this Jets offense than Aaron Rodgers is currently doing.
So true. All right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I mean I do agree that the casuals love him, but yeah, Kiram makes you play the game in a weird way. We didn't really talk about 24 Kiram at all, but it is sort of fringe viable. You have to play it on Hail, but it hasn't day two'd a couple of events. Hasn't gone much further than that, but it is decidedly okay. It can hang. It's just like I've been saying, it's never consistently the best way you can play the game, and it makes you play really weird. My NFL comparison is like I was thinking of like it's like trying to play triple option in the NFL, which is just it works fine in college because
yes, it does.
Like just teams don't have as much practice time to prep against it, but in the NFL, pros are just going to like play soundly against it, and you're gonna lose like once you get into like day two and start playing against competent players. So my comp is Tim Tebow.
I use the Gators pick too. Yeah.
I literally could not find a good one in an NFL jersey. There were better picks of him in a Mets jersey than in.
I mean, that is how we remember Tim Tebow, right? Is his run with the national championship with the Florida Gators, and then I guess the 1 year with the Jets that he did really well.
The Broncos.
The Broncos. Sorry,
he won a playoff game.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember that. Did he beat the Jets? Is that what it was?
Beat Steelers.
Steelers. All right.
He was on the Jets after that, right? He ended up on the Jets, then he ended up on the Jags as a tight end, and then he ended up in the Mets minor league system as an outfielder. Made it to AAA. I swore they were going to call him up. The year he was in AAA was like one of the really, really bad Mets teams of recent years, and I swore they were going to call him up for September just to sell tickets, and they never did.
That'd be pretty funny. I do remember that he played minor league baseball.
It's something the Wilpon Mets would have done. This isn't baseball chat. If we,
I know absolutely nothing about baseball. I could not do one of these streams for baseball, sadly.
I could.
All right, you're hosting.
You get me and Gavin. We can go forever.
And also you said that people had used it in Reg G, and I had to look it up because I do not remember this ever seeing play in Reg G. It made day two at the first Reg G regional in Indianapolis. Got top 32, and then never made another day two again. But yeah, it did get one.
Worth noting that the guy who made day two at Indy with Kiram White is a DOU mainer who spams base Kyurem form in DOU. And so he showed up to um, the regional, and he had his Kyurem Ninetales, and the team makes a decent amount of sense. It's like probably it's like maybe the best way to play Kyurem White in Reg G. And he had it at the first tournament, and he made day two with it, and did pretty respectably in day two. I want to say, I think he like top 32.
Maybe this is
Like-
my GC team. I got top 32.
Yeah, no, but yeah, no, I think he fits Tebow perfectly.
I like it. And then I think you also had a comp for Kyurem Black. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Very quick, just because it's just not good, is it's, it has Zekrom's anti-Brady energy fused with a better roster, and therefore it is Nick Foles who took over a good Eagles team and beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, and then basically never did anything else in the NFL ever again.
Yep.
For a while, I had Nick Foles as my Ho-Oh comp, I think, and then I changed that one. But yeah, I like it. I think thing is, Nick Foles is too good. He's better than Kyurem Black.
Yeah. No, I think Ho-Oh is too good for Nick Foles. Nick Foles is not a good quarterback.
Yep.
That's fair. He had one good year, which is more than I can say about Kyurem Black. Who
Not even a good year. He had a good playoff run, and then went to the Jags, and then was a Jaguars quarterback, and therefore was not good.
Which is still more than I can say about Kyurem Black. All right.
Yeah, and it's an extension of the Zekrom bit.
Yep.
Yep.
And all right, let's move on to some good restricteds now. We got some Pokemon that they maybe designed with, maybe they shouldn't have designed this Pokemon the way they did, but don't worry.
Yeah.
No. It's perfect.
Well, it's Power Cup now, so it's all right. This is Xerneas. Xerneas is arguably the greatest restricted. I think it's probably pretty definitively behind Kyogre and Groudon, but other than that, I mean, there's really nothing that can compare. Those are by far the big three restricted Pokemon. At least historically, I think, we've got some nowadays that are probably going to be up there. In 2016, it was part of the Big Four, like we talked about, where really there were only four restrictions that you need to worry about, which was Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, and then Xerneas with Geomancy, which gives it, with Power Herb, an immediate +2 special attack, special defense, and speed boost, at which point you can sweep through your opposing teams with Dazzling Gleam, which is boosted by its ability, or Moonblast, which is boosted by its ability. It is the murder button. Every single thing in the formats where this Pokemon is legal is EV trained to survive a Xerneas Moonblast if it can, or a Xerneas Dazzling Gleam if it can. And despite that, it has never won the World Championships. It's been legal for 3 different World Championships, and it has never won. I will say in Dynamax formats in 2021 and 2022, it was not very good. It didn't really benefit from Dynamax because it really wants to be able to click spread moves, and the Terra Fairy Moonblast is not Terra Fairy. Dynamax Starfall was not actually much stronger than a Moonblast from it. So, and again, Zacian was everywhere, so it was really hard to justify using it when every Pokemon can just Dynamax and get a speed boost and a special attack boost for itself and its partner whenever they wanted. So it did fall off a little bit, and of course it's not in the game right now, so we couldn't use it in Regulation G. We might see a change with that with Pokemon ZA if that gets legalized. We might see a Mega Xerneas come out, which might give it another buff that lets it compete with the latest Pokemon. But yeah, it is easily the third best restricted Pokemon ever, and despite that, has never won a championship. And for that reason, it is the easiest Dan Marino comp that we could possibly make. Dan Marino, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. I think you probably can't argue that over Tom Brady anymore, but really you can't argue that because Tom Brady keeps winning championships, and Dan Marino never won a championship. And yeah, I guess I should note also, by the way, historically, it was good in Series 10 in Sword and Shield with the one no Dynamax format we played. The one restricted no Dynamax, even though Zacian was around, it was still good. It just was Dynamax that really was a problem for it. But yeah,
And like I'm pretty sure if you put it in the game right now, it would like probably instantly be a top 3 restricted. Like now that
absolutely.
It would instantly be the best restricted.
yeah, it would. It can change its type. It gets a coverage move of what it like. You can replace Dazzle with a coverage move of your choice. Yeah, it's just instantly.
Mhm.
But it can,
Um,
counter defensively, offensively, etc.
It's the best Maridon counter you
Yeah.
can imagine. If you just position it right, you get a +1, +2 boost. You just don't care about it. Like it's yeah.
Yeah, it's the best restricted specifically because we have a couple of dragons running around.
Mm, yeah.
But yeah, like fairy coverage is also just really pretty good into the format right now. We don't have the greatest mons to capitalize on it. Station's the best one, but its player offs do line up pretty well into a bunch of teams. And Xerneas would just look at this metagame and
Mm,
uh, instantly force everyone to start running fire types and poison types and
Terra
steel
Poison,
types.
Terra Steel. Yeah, it's that like Terra types on a lot of mons change instantly.
Yep.
Like especially like Maridon, like probably doesn't get to Terra offensively anymore. Like it has to run a defensive Terra to not get owned by Xerneas.
My conspiracy theory for this gen is that they're going to give us Xerneas and Yveltal with Pokemon ZA whenever that comes out, and it's going to
Yeah.
completely flip
Mm-hmm.
the metagame on its head. Just
What's gonna be funny to me is that they're gonna give it a Mega in ZA, and it's gonna be objectively worse because it doesn't get to hold a Power Herb.
Yep.
yeah,
That's what I expected.
there's no point in running Mega Xerneas unless they really, really push it,
Plus, I
which could be
the,
funny. But
the nightmare scenario is like they give it an ability that like they replace Fairy Aura with 2-turn moves or 1-turn, and give it enough stats to make up
ooh,
for losing Fairy Aura.
Yeah,
ooh,
I mean, it gets to hold
okay.
a life orb then, and that's enough. That's all it needs, right?
This is the Mega ability in theory.
Oh, right.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're gonna do something like that. I think that they missed it. I think it was Justin Burns, who was like, they missed their chance. They should have done that for Dialga. 2-turn moves use no recharge turn. Because it's the time guy. Is Dialga time or space?
Dialga's time.
Dialga's time, right? So they should have made Roar of Time.
It's the 2-turn signature move, yeah.
Yeah, they really should have done that as a signature ability, and they just missed their opportunity. I don't think they're going to do it with Xerneas. It doesn't thematically make sense.
Probably not. There's no way. It would be too good.
But I do think that they are going
But
to
so
make
is,
Mega Xerneas, and it's not going to be any good.
No.
The-
Oh no! I swear to God, if these megas don't require held items, but then the other side of it is you probably can't Terra it.
That's okay. It's maybe not okay, right? It does kind of want the coverage move.
Yeah,
It historically has never run coverage moves.
it's never
It just
needed
wants
a
a
coverage
defensive Terra.
move. Yeah, it wants a defensive Terra. Mhm.
I mean, but it never it's wanted a coverage move. It's never had a coverage move. I mean, it has hidden power,
Yeah.
but that's not really the same as Terra Fire,
No.
Terra Blast, which is offensive and
No,
defensive.
I'm gonna push back on that.
It hasn't needed a coverage move.
Xerneas does not really want coverage
You
moves. It
could,
wants its teammates to provide coverage. It's
yeah,
just looking to
you could also still 2-hit KO resists with +2 Moonblast.
Geomancy, Moonblast, Gleam, Protect is the perfect moveset. You don't want anything else. Its friends can carry the load against the fairy resists. Its job is to beat everything that doesn't resist fairy.
Which it
Which
does.
does get a little bit harder to do in Terra. If
Yeah.
anything can turn into a fairy resist,
Mhm.
but it also gets to have a Chiyu next to it. So, like
Oh God.
we'll deal with those problems when we get there.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we've lost the plot a little bit because we're supposed to talk about Xerneas his QB comparison, but also I think this is just the perfect comparison. So there's very little to.
No, there's little to say, right? It's the goat without a ring. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to see Xerneas come back. I think you're right. I think it would make the format really interesting if we had Xerneas, and I love the way Xerneas plays. So I'd look forward to it.
Me too. I'm a huge Xerneas fan. So I am biding my time waiting in the shadows until my deer returns.
And then next up, we got its partner in crime, or I guess its evil counterpart. We have Yveltal. Yveltal is an interesting Pokemon. It got released in Generation 6 alongside Xerneas. It did see some play in 2016, but it wasn't one of the big four. I think It's probably the 5th best restricted in that format. It did win German nationals, and it got top 16 Sam Pandelis at the World Championships. But again, it wasn't ever super common. But in Generation 7, they introduced Lunala and they introduced Ultra Necrozma, and those were two of the strongest Pokemon in the game, along with Solgaleo, which also saw some play, all of which, of course, are Psychic types. And Yveltal is really, really good into Psychic types being a Dark type. And so in Sun Series, we saw Evil Dawn and Evil Ogre and Xerneas Yveltal all win regional championships. In Ultra Series, Evil Dawn and Evil Ogre were both quite common. And in my opinion, Evil Dawn at the end of the format was one of the top 3 archetypes. Of course, Joe Ugarte was a big fan of that. He won his first ever regional with Evil Dawn way back in the day. So yeah, it was really, really good in Gen 7. In Gen 8, it didn't see that much play. In 2021, it was usable as a single restricted that could click Max Airstream and Darkness, but it wasn't all that common. And in 2022, it was a little more common. I know Zhang won a regional, Milwaukee regionals with the Evil Dawn combination. But again, Zacian being this fairy type that can hit Dynamax Pokemon really powerfully was a big problem. But that being said, it was really, really good into Calyrex Shadow. And if you could line it up into Calyrex Ice, it was quite good into that as well. So it had that going for it. Now, it's not in the game. But of course, we got Pokemon ZA right around the corner at some point this year. And so we would expect a Mega Yveltal. And unlike Xerneas, where its item slot is locked up, Yveltal has never really known what to do with its item. It's usually ran in Gen 7, it ran a Super Citrus Berry a lot of the time, or it ran Black Glasses a lot of the time. And so it's one of those Pokemon that hasn't really needed an item. It's it's benefited from one for sure, but it hasn't hasn't a required item in the way that some of these restricted have. And so
Assault Vest was fun if you weren't running Tail.
Yep, Assault Vest was an item that you could use. And so I think that Mega Yveltal is going to go hard if we get that in VGC. Any thoughts on the history of Yveltal in VGC?
I had a lot of fun running Yveldon in 19. I've always liked the design. Oblivion Wing is a fun move. It's very funny to click Snarl and do 60% to a Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just my thought on Yveltal and Xerneas' flavor is that Yveltal is the death Pokemon, but it's got a really defensive supporting kit, and its its signature move restores HP,
Health, yeah.
which is more appropriate for a Lifebringer restricted. And then Xerneas's despite being the bringer of life Pokemon and having rainbows and such, it just sets up and lays waste to everything. So I think I think it's really amusing that their kits as competitive Pokemon are just completely flipped from their flavor. That part's really funny, but yeah, no, I think you did a good job of describing Yveltal's history.
Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, because it is the counterpart to Xerneas, of course, we got to tie it into the Dan Marino comparison. And so, if Dan Marino is Xerneas, then Yveltal has to be Jim Kelly, the Bills QB, who directly competed in the same division as Dan Marino's Dolphins, led them to 4 straight Super Bowl and lost 4 straight Super Bowls. Of course, Yveltal, maybe a little less successful than Jim Kelly, but Yveltal is a Hall of Fame level restricted. It is one of the best restricteds of all time. But it's a Hall of Fame level restricted, but I don't think it's really one of the greatest restricteds of all time. It had one really, really good year, and it is better than almost all of the QBs restricteds on this list. But which isn't, I guess, entirely true of all the QBs on this list, but it's true of most of the QBs on this list. Yeah, but it's a Hall of Fame level restricted, but it's not an all-time great level restricted. And I think that's kind of where Jim Kelly lands for me on the all-time NFL QB chart.
Yeah. Hall of Famer, but was never in the GOAT conversation at any point. And if we're comparing to the Weather Trio and Zern, all of them were in the GOAT conversation at some point. Or, well, actually, I mean, the conversation's kind of over, but they were all in it at some point.
But I mean, if Yveltal had won a couple more majors, if the Bills had hit a couple more field goals,
yeah.
like you could the career was there. Like you could see him being in there
Yeah.
if a couple more breaks had gone his way.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, ultimately not quite on the level, but yeah, very close.
Very
So yeah,
close.
I just fully agree with Jim Kelly for Volta.
Yep. And of course, like I said, I do think that if there's any Pokemon that's going to really, really benefit from Pokemon ZA, it's going to be Eviltal with a buff or a potential Mega Evolution because it really doesn't need its item. It just needs the raw stat boost, and it's already got the perfect kit for that. So I'm excited to see what which future holds for Eviltal.
Mm-hmm. Give it
Um,
Gale Wings.
Yep.
It would be very funny.
it doesn't need
It would be funny.
Dark Aura is perfect.
It also
It's
likes Dark Aura.
it really is perfect. Dark Aura.
It just would be it would be funny for like it to be able to restore its health and then fire off a priority Oblivion Wing.
That's true. Or Priority Tailwind. Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next one. You might forget this is a Generation 6 restricted because it did not get its complete form until Generation 7, but this is Zygarde. This is one of my favorite legendary Pokemon. Needless to say, just like its other two partners in crime, it is not in the game right now. But again, Pokemon ZA is a Zygarde-focused game, so I would hope that it gets some sort of a buff. The way Zygarde works is that it starts out at one of two forms, either 10% form, which is the dog, which I do not have on screen because it never saw play, or at the 50%
Nobody used
form.
dog.
50% form was the base form that you normally see in Gen 6. And when it goes under 50% health, it would transform into the 100% form if it had the Power Construct ability, which was the more common ability on it. And it gains HP, kind of like if you see Terapagos in Regulation G, that's kind of the same vibe, where, if you knocked it down to 45% HP, next thing you know, it's at 75% HP, something like that, because it has this massive
And then it has
base
and then it now has
216 HP
200.
stat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
216 HP stat. It's very, very high. This didn't mean very much in the Dynamax era, where every Pokemon could just double its HP on command. But
It made it an absolute menace in the legendary Dynamax raid den.
oh yeah, I bet. Oh god.
Other than that.
But yeah, in Sun and Moon series, this Pokemon was a menace because the way you played it was, and it was really only played one way. You'd give it a Misty Seed, and you'd have Tapu Fini next to it, which had Heal Pulse, and you would just click Coil. You click Coil with your Zygarde. You could click Swagger with your Tapu Fini to give it +2 attack boost, protected by Misty Terrain. And at some point, with a +1 Spadef and a base 216 HP stat and 2 or 3 or 4 defense boosts, it was impossible for your opponent to knock it out without a critical hit. If they did start targeting it down and they put it under 50% health, you would just get a massive HP boost, and then you could heal Pulse back up to full very easily. And then you click Thousand Arrows, which is of course a ground type move that you cannot be immune to. Grounds the ground type Pokemon until you win the game. This was normally paired with Solgaleo because otherwise you just lose to Xerneas, and you needed the guy that beats Xerneas. And it cut a few regionals here and there, but it never won anything. I think its best finish was top 4 at regionals. And this is the Pokemon that I used throughout Sun series, so I really love using this guy. It was really, in some ways, it was the Dondozo of Sun series, I would say. Just totally attacks on different axes than any other team, and was really just like a build the towers type team. Even though it played quite differently, I think thematically it was quite similar. But yeah, and then in Ultra Series it came back, and all the big dogs came around, and it was entirely unviable. Anything to add about the history of Zygarde?
Not really. It's a really cool concept for a Pokemon. It's the first in battle form change that changed HP.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't get many of those. Like almost all of them.
Other than Dynamax, like it's just Zygarde and Terapagos, right?
Yep.
To my knowledge, yeah. Pretty sure.
Yeah. And so to do the comparison, let's see. I think was this my comparison? Or was this your comparison? This was yours, right?
The first one is yours. The second one's mine.
Okay. I don't remember this one at all, but okay, let's do it. I got my notes. So I said that this is like a totally immobile QB. He was really strong, but in lower power level formats, but couldn't really hang with the big dogs. I think that it was Phillip Rivers, who is notably one of the slowest QBs in the league. Was quite good, all things considered, except despite being from the same era as, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Drew Brees. He was always never quite the best quarterback in that bunch. Certainly not the best quarterback in that bunch, but never quite on the best team with that bunch either. You'd pretty consistently see the Chargers either in the playoffs or like really in the wild card and wild card contention at the end of the season. They went 9-7 like every year. They never got to the Super Bowl, which is pretty comparable to Zygarde, who basically got top 4 at like every regional, but never ever got to finals. So yeah, I think that's pretty comparable to Phillip Rivers and his career.
Mm-hmm. And you actually mentioned my comp, which is just I think Rivers is the 50% form, and like the fully realized version of that archetype of QB is kind of the next guy up the list, Drew Brees, who similarly was never the best quarterback of the era. He did win a Super Bowl in his only appearance, and that's also the only time he won the NFC Championship in 3 appearances. The Saints were always good, but were never the best team, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with both these comps. I don't have too much to add other than shout out to Bruno in chat for
the kid. Yes, there's a kid for every Zygarde cell.
Yeah, many kids is 100 Zygarde cells. I see it. I like it. I will say, if you could start out with Zygarde 100% on the field, it would probably have Drew Brees' level of success, right? Like that's really You wish that the one big downside is that you do have to start in the 50% or 10% form. Maybe we'll see a change to that in Pokemon ZA. Who knows?
Yep.
Mega Zygarde.
Or might get a new form. The Zygarde 1000% form. It's gonna go hard.
It's gonna go hard. You gotta catch 10. You gotta catch 20 of the 50% Zygardes and combine 20 of them into one.
Do you think they're gonna give us any more intermediate forms also?
Maybe. I could see it. 25% form?
75, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
We'll see. Again, I'm really looking forward to it because I have played we all played a lot of Gen 7 Pokemon. Yveltal, sorry, not Yveltal. Zygarde. I guess Yveltal has a lot to benefit, but really Xerneas and Zygarde were the two that were two of our favorites. So I'm really excited to see those guys come back into the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Gen 7.
Let's talk about the next Pokemon. Yeah, Gen 7. We have Lunala. Lunala is the first of the 3 restricteds that came out in Generation 7. I guess technically 4 or 5, depending on how you want to classify them. But yeah, Lunala has been good, like consistently good. It won an Internats in Sun Series without its Z-move, which was Ashton Cox, I believe. And in fact, there was a very funny moment in Sun Series where Ashton and Jeremy Rodriguez got to the finals of Memphis Regionals, and they both had max attack EVs instead of special attack EVs on their Lunala. Infamous moment in VGC history. Our good friend Alex Underhill won a regional with Lunala Groudon Trick Room, which was, of course, a really strong comp, probably the strongest Lunala. Lunala Groudon was like really the only comp where we've seen a lot of Lunala in both Moon Series and Ultra Series and 2022. But yeah, that was one of the strongest teams. It won the World Championships in Ultra Series. I forgot. Yeah, it actually won Worlds.
Yeah, it won Worlds.
Mm-hmm. And it was. I know Gavin was a big fan of that archetype. It was probably one of the 5 or 6 best archetypes.
Made 2 of Worlds with Lunadon as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was not really used in the 1 restricted Dynamax formats. And part of that is because again, Charizard and Venusaur were 2 of the best Pokemon in that format, and so residual damage does not very good for this Pokemon when its really best use is Shadow Shield, but which is of course a multi-scale clone, and so it didn't really succeed that much. But in 2022, it did. I think Gavin won a regional with Lunadon, and then also it got second at the World Championships with Lunadon, and so it really it's really like another one of those support restricteds that has a lot of tools. It has Trick Room, it has Meteor Beam to Nuke Incineroar. Now it did not have that in Gen 7. It has Wide Guard as another supporting tool, while also having really strong moves like Moongeist Beam and nowadays Expanding Force. In Regulation G, it is still kicking. It's still around. It is probably the 10th best restricted, I would say. I did have to rank all of these in a previous video. And I'd say it's the 10th or 11th best restricted in the format with Hard Trick Room. It got Day 2 at Worlds with Brian Collins. It has Meteor Beam to Nuke Incineroar, and then you can put it within DD and click Expanding Force, which is quite strong. It can support your own Ursaluna as your secondary sort of restricted Pokemon on a Hard Trick Room team. I would not be surprised to see this at a tournament at all. This is a Pokemon that if I saw it at a tournament, I would be like, yeah, okay. I wouldn't want to face more than one of it, but I wouldn't. It's good. It really is genuinely one of the restricted you can use in this format. It does face some steep competition because it does have the same typing as Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is, of course, released the generation after Lunala. It is faster. It hits harder. It has a strong spread move, but it doesn't set up Trick Room. Lunala does have a niche. And then also, Terapagos also has multi-scale, but also has like 3 other abilities. And so it also just has to compete with that guy. So they've really, the last 2 generations, they've just made better versions of Lunala. And yet somehow it is still kicking. It is still around. And in a double restricted format, I think it is going to see some play.
Yeah, so...
double restricted is where its kit kind of shines.
Like you said, it needs. It has a bunch of tricks up its sleeve. It can, just it's got a viable moves list that's like a dozen moves long. But yeah, it always does need to have a primary weapon on the team to really maximize its kit. Uh, so whether it's supporting a Groudon, supporting a Xerneas, supporting like a really alpha number 1 wide receiver, that's where Lunala is going to be at its best. So much like Lunala needs to have Groudon, Matthew Stafford kind of needs Calvin Johnson or Puka or Cooper Cup or someone like that can just really carry the game. And he's gonna throw with weird arm angles. He was a wily veteran even when he was coming into the league, and he's just continued to expand on his bag of tricks. He's also really loved in Detroit for playing through injuries and not letting a big hit take him out. He notably separated his shoulder and still came on to win a game in his rookie season. And that's pretty similar to multiscale in that pretty much any hit is not going to take a Lunel out of the game. It's got a ring.
Still remember the one year where this Matt Stafford always hyper targets his wide receiver 1 philosophy made Kenny Golladay a wide receiver 1, and then he got paid by the Giants, and I'm literally not sure if he caught a pass in the NFL after that.
It was really funny from the Lions fans' perspective.
And then like you mentioned at the end of it, he won a championship. It's like just like Lunala, never really been the best QB in the league. But won a championship in 2019 and got second at Worlds in 2022. Matt Stafford also, really has had the talent around him to find a lot of success in the league, despite never really being the best QB in the league. So I like that comparison a lot.
Yeah, he fits on good comps and pulls his own weight. Menacing Moonrise Maelstrom is the equivalent of Stafford's 5,000-yard season. If you need to put up big numbers, he's absolutely capable of it. But that's not really when his teams are going to perform the best. It's still part of it, but it's not. He's not meant to be the focal point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do want to add one more note on Lunala. It is one of my favorite restricted designs. I love the way this thing looks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's quite cool.
Did we ever get shiny Lunala?
Maybe
in
not.
Sword and Shield. Not in Gen 7.
I don't know.
I really like the shiny. I really think, honestly, they should have made shiny Solgaleo black. They should have gone for the Eclipse colors. A lunar eclipse is red, a solar eclipse is black. They should have made shiny Solgaleo black instead of red. But this design is sick. I love it.
It is.
You got the Blood Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, well, now we actually got Blood Moon, and it goes well with
we
Blood
actually
Moon.
do have Blood Moon, but
we should give it Blood Moon.
Nerd of Now says there was a special event shiny Lunala at the end of Gen 7. Now I want to use Lunala. Legitimately, this is the coolest shiny Pokemon maybe ever.
Oh, sick! I love it. Yeah,
certainly the coolest legendary shiny. I think
I mean, just that perfect lunar eclipse red. It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next restricted. We got Lunala's counterpart. We got Solgaleo, which also added in Gen 7. Basically added to the game to beat Xerneas. It is a Steel Psychic type, and it had AC move that could hit through. That could do double damage with what was it called? Sunrise.
Searing Sunrays Smash.
Searing Sunray Smash.
It's very alliterative.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one cool thing, again, I saw play on Zygarde teams, and what you could do is you could swagger it with your Tapu Fini and then use your Z move, and you would knock out Xerneas through Protect, which is like one of the coolest interactions that you could do with this Pokemon. Yeah, but it only really saw some play in Gen 7 as a partner to Zygarde in Sun and Moon series, and then it saw some play next to Rayquaza in Ultra series. But yeah, really you would only ever use it if your primary restricted was very weak to Xerneas. It has a Clear Body clone, so it saw some play in 2021 as a solo restricted with Max Steel Spike. And you could bulldoze next to it, and you could give it a weakness policy, and then Terra it, and so you get this really powerful Max Steel Spike right off the bat, and also get a +2 attack boost. And it never really picked up. It was around for the first couple tournaments, and then never really saw a ton of success. And yeah, so you guys have a comp? Yeah. Well, let's hear it.
Yes. So if you've ever watched a Matt Stafford game, you'll know this fun fact, but Solgaleo and Lunala, they started out as the same base form, Cosmom, and then they evolved into Cosmog, and like they came up together, but then their lives just took different paths. Lunala turned into basically Solgaleo is Clayton Kershaw, Matt Stafford's childhood friend, who is just like an all-pro level MLB starting pitcher.
All pro is underselling it. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, they both throw the ball really hard. Like Stafford's known for his velocity, and Kershaw certainly
Not
is
anymore.
as well.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
He's known for his curveball. He is the best curveball in the game. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, jokes aside, we've got a different comp. Jared Goff is who we decided to go with. He's not Solgaleo is never terribly flashy. He plays a supportive role on whatever team he's on. But the teams are pretty good, and like kind of like Stafford, also is just there to support whoever is best receiver is, but also pretty durable. You guys have something you want to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, it just works. Like he's there to, he's there to get the ball to the real restricteds, whether it's Jameer Gibbs or Amon-Ra St. Brown or what have you.
Or Zygarde, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And Bruno points out in chat that Goff is also literally a lion, just like Solgaleo. So yes. I like that.
Yep. And like Goff and Stafford were part of the most mutually beneficial trade in NFL history.
It was a really good trade.
Where the Rams won a Super Bowl picking up Stafford, and the Lions have turned into Super Bowl contenders. I don't want to jinx anything, but like they're both two sides of the same coin. And have just been part of the same organization. Much like Lunala and Solgaleo are part of the same organization.
Mm-hmm. Sadly, I will point out while we're talking about it, Solgaleo's shiny, very, very ugly relative to Lunala's. It's very sad.
This is what I said. Like this shiny needs to be jet black, like a solar eclipse, or like black, but keep this little like yellow corona. Like make it look like a solar eclipse to go with the lunar eclipse.
Sick! It would look so good.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's got the little gold part on its face, and just the rest of it can be blacked out.
Literally, just keep the gold highlights where they are, and make the rest of it black.
Oh man,
that would be so cool.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. In fact, I'm gonna go look up Black Solgaleo right now.
It shows up if you search for shiny Solgaleo. There are some people who have done it because it deserves to be done.
Shout outs to Reddit. This looks so good. Oh man.
Exactly. See, exactly.
We could have had this. That's so sad.
Yep. And again, it's a good counterpart because it actually looks like a solar eclipse, and Lunala Shiny looks like a lunar eclipse. It's perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, instead of Black Solgaleo, we actually have something else that is somewhat comparable, and that is Duskmane Necrozma.
Yep.
But so Necrozma. Necrozma was the third of the legendary trio. Much like Kyurem, base form Necrozma is not really a Pokemon, but it can combine with either Solgaleo or Lunala and transform into Dawnwings or Duskmane. They both have essentially Filter as their ability, and they're both pretty comparable to Solgaleo and Lunala in terms of viability, which is to say, not good. I think that generally speaking, Duskmane never really saw play outside of turning into Ultra Necrozma, whereas Dawnwings has seen some play as a Psyspam user in lieu of using Lunala, but I think it generally is like most people prefer Lunala because it's more reliable in setting up Trick Room, even though Dawnwings has a lower speed and higher special attack stat. So yeah, it's Dawnwings also. Thank you for the subscription, Max MC. I appreciate it. Free the 2-minute animation mod, and yes, that is
the cutscene. Yeah.
I was about to get to that. Yeah. So of course, in Gen 7, both of these Pokemon could Ultra Burst into Ultra Necrozma, which was one of the strongest restricted Pokemon in Ultra Series. It was maybe the reason that Rayquaza wasn't as dominant as it was in 2016 because it just like outsped and knocked it out, and it was really good into a lot of the Rayquaza teams. And Psychic Terrain, of course, made it even more powerful when it usually had a Tapu Lele next to it. We liked to call its Z move Light That Burns Your Graphics Card because your 3DS could barely handle it, and it was legitimately like a 2-minute.
The 3DS was really struggling at the end of Ultra Series.
Yep.
Especially, there was like a Primal, a Necrozma, and a Mega Ray on the field. So like Delta Stream was up, and there were like 3 or 4 restricted on the field. Like, my God, that thing was chugging along at like a frame a second.
Yep. Oh man, it was rough.
Doing it fast.
But yeah, this was really good. It was honestly really good from the start of Ultra Series. I know, Nails, you got like top 16 at EUIC with it, right? At the very start of the format.
Top 32 to UIC, yeah. With Ultraneck plus Cernius. It was doing similar things as X-Ray, just like one guy is there to lay down the cover fire for anything that Xerneas can't hit, and then Xerneas is there to hit everything that isn't weak to fairy and just run over it. And it was pretty cool. It worked well.
Yep. And then a little later on, Tommy Cooling, who we mentioned, helped out with his PowerPoint. Big shout out to Tommy. He won a regional with this, I think, with Groudon next to it, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And so that was the core that was really, really powerful, and he really put it on the map. It was a little underrated going into that regional. He popped off with it, and then from then on, it was a format staple pretty much. It got second at the World Championships with Hirofumi Kimura. And of course, since then, it hasn't been able to Ultra Burst or use its Z move since the Nintendo Switch era, which made it a lot worse. Like I mentioned, Dawnwings has seen some fringe play. It did get top 8 at Japan Nationals in Regulation G. Duskmane has been entirely unviable. And I mean, legitimately, Solgaleo is just better in almost every way when you have Incineroar in the format. And so I'm kind of lumping them into one Pokemon because they're both pretty unviable, and their peak was when they were the same Pokemon and could be used almost interchangeably as the same Pokemon. And as a result, I'm using my comparison as Dante Culpepper, who was one of the first really great mobile QBs in NFL history. He was elite for his first 4 years in the league, and then he suffered a massive knee injury and was really never the same player. He bounced around the league for a little bit, but really never found a foothold again. And I think that's pretty similar to Necrozma, who was absolutely elite for its first few years in VGC. And they literally cut off its knees. It does not have knees anymore. And now it sucks. It's just not good. It needed its knees, just like Dante Culpepper needed his knees to be the quarterback that he once was. And so, yeah, I think that Dante Culpepper is my comparison.
Yep. I like that. I've got comps for the non-ultra forms as well.
Yeah, let's hear them.
So, going into Sun Series, like, people thought Duskmane would be good. Like, people saw going into Sun Series, like, okay, this is the Xerneas format. This is the thing that beats Xerneas. It's slow. It can trick room for itself. It unfortunately it does not get it gets Prism armor, which is like
It's like filter,
Prism
right?
armor produces
Filter.
it's like it's filter. Except instead of full metal body, which is clear body, which would be better.
It was the it was the
It was
Xerneas
getting
check that could stand up to a precipice blades. Like
exactly.
it had real reasons to be hyped.
Yes, it was yeah, but and then it turned out it was just mid. So the comp for that is Trevor Lawrence, who got a lot of hype. Like the 2020 quarterback draft class was really really good. It could Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. And going into 2021, people were trying to hype up the top three of that class in the same way. Trevor Lawrence was the consensus top quarterback in that class. He was getting hyped up kind of unreasonably as a generational talent. Like he was a very good college quarterback, but he doesn't deserve to be hyped in that way. And he's just been mid. And boy, was he still the best quarterback in that class, because that draft class was bad. The three quarterbacks at the top of that class that were trying to get hyped up like that are in order: Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. Woof.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I remember that. I was a Trey Lance believer when he was coming out of college. That did not.
I am still a Trey Lance believer. I don't know why he hasn't gotten the shot. Like clearly he has to suck, even though like he's only started like 4 NFL games. I don't know. I still think he can be good, regardless. Dawn Wings, meanwhile, everyone kind of saw as worse Lunala, and they were largely right, but it's had some moments in modern formats, with E-Force, with Indeedee next to it. With the right weapons, it's managed to carve out a niche, and it can be good. So that's a quarterback I just mentioned for the 2020 class, Tua Tagovailoa, whose stock fell quite a bit going into the 2020 draft, mostly due to injuries he suffered at Alabama, to the point where the Dolphins' motto going into that season was tank for Tua, where they were trying to have the number 1 pick to get Tua. They got the 4th overall pick instead and still got Tua because Burrow shot all the way up to be the number 1 pick. And honestly, they probably still whiffed on that pick because they could have taken Justin Herbert, but whatever. Anyway, he had some really bad years early on in Miami, and then he got like the 3 fastest skill position players of the NFL to throw to, and the offense has kind of carved out a niche with like bubble screens and short passes and just like putting the ball in the hands of Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Devon Chain and just telling him to run up the field. And so,
And
it
they all do
works.
it pretty well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, no, like in the right niche, Dawn Wings can definitely succeed and even like run over the competition if they're not prepared for it.
Yeah,
But
ask
if you're
Tua. This Dolphins offense scored 70 points in a game last year.
yeah, and they've had a couple of barn burners this year. I know they had one like in the latter half of the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the opponent's prepared for him, if you're if you're playing Dawn Wings and your opponent has some dark types and terrain resets, you're just gonna have a bad time, and that's like trying to show up with the Dolphins to a playoff game in January. Like
Yeah.
trying to go into Green Bay with a bunch of speedsters is never gonna end well. And
Yeah.
so that's the Dawn Wings to a comparison. And
I will say, Bruno, because I see you talking there. This might be Tua slander. I am a Tua believer. I should put that out there. I have long been a believer, mostly because I see fantasy drafts every year and I see Tyreek as a first rounder and Waddle as a third rounder, and I'm like, in order to justify these ADPs, Tua has to be a top 10 quarterback, and he's been good when he's on the field.
Yep. Yeah. No. Like Dawn Wings also could be real if everything comes together.
Yeah,
And
he
like
doesn't
it's not that
doesn't
far
get
off.
a knockoff.
Yeah. Um, but like nothing. It hasn't all come together yet. There's still probably something there.
Yeah.
Bruno says, I named my dog Finn Tua before he took a single NFL snap. I'm biased as AF. So we got a resident Tua believer in chat.
We'll get to my biases pretty soon.
Yup. All right. I like the Tua comp for sure. And yeah, I guess let's move on to Generation 8. And so this is where Nails didn't play Pokemon, so he has less to talk about Pokemon, which is convenient because this is also I have a confession about my football knowledge, as you might have noticed at the stream. I don't know. I think I've hit it pretty well. But I'm not an NFL fan. I don't watch the NFL anymore. Now that we're 2 hours in and you're hooked into the video, I can say that. I couldn't say that at the beginning of the stream. But yeah, so I grew up a Miami Dolphins fan. I moved to the U.S. when I was 3 years old, and my parents are not American, so we didn't have a team. I grew up in Iowa, so I didn't have an NFL team near me that I had to support. So I made the mistake of choosing the Miami Dolphins as my NFL team of choice. And what a mistake that was. It led to, 15, 20 years of heartbreak and misery.
The rest of this call is very familiar with that.
Yep. It was not. I think they made the playoffs twice. In that time span. And so I am very familiar with the NFL from the 2002 till 2018 era, give or take, right? But around that time, I graduated college, and in college, we'd sit in Sundays with like 3 monitors in a room doing homework and watching all the NFL games. We were all in the same fantasy league, so we'd all be keeping track of that. And it was really fun, right? But yeah, after I graduated college, and the social aspect of the NFL kind of fell off, and I realized that the NFL was just making me miserable because my team sucked. And also like, I don't know, that was around the time where like the Kaepernick stuff was happening, and I started to realize like the NFL is really CTE stuff was happening. NFL is really exploitative. I still love college football. I can't pretend like I'm not a little bit of a hypocrite, but
college football was pretty exploitative.
I just I really can't support this. So I stopped watching the NFL. Mostly because my team sucked, and it just was not fun to watch a team that was bad every single year. And of course now they're like, okay. So like now it's like, it's funny how that works out. But, and of course I replaced that with the UFC, which also has shitty owners and is also awful for its athletes. So again, I cannot pretend to have a moral high ground here, but
Dude, you got to embrace football nihilism. Like, I have been a Washington fan my entire life. It was horrifying until this year. Like, I have a Washington Post cover. It actually might be in arm's reach right now. Let's see. Yeah, I have a Washington Post cover for the day Dan Snyder sold the team, and like people were celebrating in the streets like we had just won World War II. Like, it was bad. But
yeah.
But
yeah. So I know a decent amount about NFL history. But at the same time, now that we are talking about some of the newer restricteds that have come into the game recently that don't have really complete career trajectories panned out, where they don't really make sense to compare to some of these older quarterbacks, I have a lot less to say about some of these restricteds. I do have a lot to say about their history in VGC, but I'm going to be deferring a lot more to Nails and to Jeremy when we're talking about the actual quarterback comparisons for some of these guys. I do have a few opinions here and there. And so, yeah, I guess that was my little spiel. That was my confession that I had to give out at some point during the stream. Also, big shout outs to Jeremy and to Tommy and Nick for really putting this together, because I couldn't do it without them, given my football knowledge. So, with that, let's talk about Zacian or Zacian. Do you guys say Zacian or Zacian?
Zacian.
I flip back and forth.
Okay.
Depending on which suits my needs.
Same here. So, Zacian was the single best restricted of the Dynamax era, because it turns out that it's the only thing that could actually KO a Dynamax Pokemon with its signature move, Behemoth Blade. And it also got +1 attack boost every time it switched in. Not just the first time it switches in, like it does now. It got nerfed after that. And yeah, I think they actually nerfed its stats this gen as well. They dropped its attack stat.
Lost some attack.
So they really this Pokemon was that good in Generation 8 that they had to really nerf it significantly. It was by far the best restricted for both 2021 and 2022 for basically the entire time. Despite that, it is still viable in Regulation G. It got top 4 at Los Angeles Regionals with Kian. And Grant Weldon got top 32 at the World Championships with it. I think I had it 7th as the 7th best restricted on my tier list, 7th or 8th best restricted. So it is decidedly still around. It is still quite good, despite the fact that they nerfed it pretty considerably. Yeah, and I mean, we could talk more about why it is good in Regulation G, but I think that's a topic for another stream. I will let you guys talk about your QB comparison for Zacian.
Bruno, you called this one. It's Mahomes. He set the league on fire from like the instant he took the starting job in 2018. He's already got 3 rings. We were seriously debating whether or not he was the GOAT as early as 2021. He made the game look easy, was completing impossible passes, like doing behemoth blade levels of damage on offense. However, the Chiefs' offense has really fallen off this year. Somehow they're still 15-1. They're the AFC 1 seed. They have a worse point differential than the 9-7 Buccaneers. I really don't know how they're doing it. It's like they're doing just enough to win. He's been nerfed through the loss of his weapons. Like they traded Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce is getting older. I will never forgive him for what he did to Rashee Rice this year. As that Rashee Rice fantasy truther that ruined several seasons for me. Like a lot of like the casual NFL fan still thinks he's the GOAT and like he's still good, but he's past his first peak and there might be a second one, there might not be. We don't know.
Yeah, the cap is or like the ceiling is just as high as anyone we've ever seen. And yeah,
this like he's shown the ceiling. The ceiling is the greatest of all time. Yeah.
Yeah. He has a crown. Like for a reason, but like kind of mid right now. But also, if he shows up and wins a regional, no one's going to be too surprised.
Yep.
Much like nobody's going to be too surprised if the Chiefs win this year. But yeah, it just remains to be seen how on form he is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting because like they never really like nerfed or restricted like that before, right? Like I don't think they ever did that immediately after the generation that came out. And yeah, I think the Patrick Mahomes comparison is quite good because
the only other significant nerfs to restricted have been like via removing mechanics from the game.
Right.
Yeah. So like Ultraneck definitely got nerfed, but
yeah, and like the weather trio when they took megas and primals out.
And so yeah, I mean, as far as quarterbacks that were so elite that like it's so elite and then also like had a fall off that was pretty drastic, but are still like good. I don't know. I think that there are not a ton throughout VGC history, at least or NFL history that I can think of.
He's still winning games. Like they are 15-1. They have clinched the 1 seed. They clinched the 1 seed like 3 weeks ago. And yet like everyone thinks they're gonna get like dropped in the divisional round, and we'll see.
And now it is very interesting to see who will what will happen to Patrick Mahomes moving forward, just like Station moving forward. Where we don't know if he's gonna continue his drop off and continue to be power crept, or if he's
we'll see if Xavier Worthy becomes Tyreek Hill. We'll see if Rashee Rice gets suspended. We'll see if
there's a lot of uncertainty moving forward. I like it. All right, and so moving. Nerd Now does have one. Technically, the special attack, special defense split did nerf Mewtwo pretty significantly. So I guess that is fair. Yeah,
it nerfed a lot of different things. It's not just Mewtwo. It was just a fundamental game change. That's like the implementation of the forward pass. It's just a completely different. The game does not work the same way anymore.
Speaking of the implementation, like that reminds me of I briefly thought of like my other comp idea for Mewtwo was if we went all the way back to Johnny Unitas, like when the game was just fundamentally different.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward to Zacian's little brother, I guess. Not little brother anymore. Zamazenta. Zamazenta was outright bad in the Dynamax era. Instead of the attack boost that Zacian got, it got the defense boost. And so it could not KO Dynamax Pokemon with its signature move, Behemoth Bash. Then, in this generation, despite also nerfing it, just like Zacian, they also had to reduce its stats slightly. I don't know why. It wasn't very good. But I guess
really
they
did need to do that.
Yeah, but you know what?
Maybe it would be too good now that they've given it the move. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave it body press, and now it's really good. It is a top 5 restricted Pokemon, undoubtedly. Arguably the 4th best restricted Pokemon, certainly in the top 5. It won Stockholm Regionals with Michael Kelsch. It won Taiwan Nationals in Regulation G. It got top 4 at Worlds, also Michael Kelsch. It has Wide Guard, which has always been, its calling card as a sort of supportive restricted, but then they gave it Body Press, and now it KOs Incineroar, which means that the combination of those two things is something that a lot of restricteds really want in a partner. So it's going to be really, really good in a 2 restricted format because it is the best support restricted Pokemon. It does everything you want a support restricted Pokemon to do. It has coaching too.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't seen it with this full kit in a 2 restricted format yet, and like it's capable of putting up like I guess Lunala in 19 numbers is like the best comp where it's like on the short list of best restricteds because it threatens damage while still having a really good support kit.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever seen a Pokemon that was so bad in one generation become so good in the next generation. And I hope you guys have a comparison that really plays that up.
Oh, we do, absolutely.
Yep.
Let's hear
it. Which one of us is taking this?
You can take it.
All right, so this quarterback was a first round pick in, what was it, 2018? And maybe 2019. Regardless, he was really bad for his first 2 years in the league, including like getting benched for a significant portion of his rookie season. And then the clock rolled to the 2020s, and he got a new offense, got better weapons, became a better passer, and is now like honestly like comparing him to Zamazenta might be slander because he's not necessarily like a top.
Zamazenta's really good, and this guy's better.
He is a top 2 quarterback. Yeah, it's Josh Allen.
But yeah, Josh Allen.
He's a top 2 MVP candidate. He plays fast. He runs hard. And his style of running is he will just run through you.
Zamazenta
he will go around
press
you
your body, and
go
yeah,
right
Josh Allen.
You. Yep.
Josh Allen also runs over you. Can do a bunch of different things to support the team, but also can just put the game on his back and
can run,
make
can
plays.
screen, can hand it off, deep ball. It's just he does. He puts the team on his back, and he just does it all.
Yeah, who would have thought? Who would have thought? I mean, I remember Josh Allen being called a bust back in 2019, back in early 2020. It is crazy to see, and having not really watched since he was called a bust, it is crazy to hear next thing you know, like, oh yeah, Josh Allen's like the best quarterback in the league. It's like, what, for real? So that was definitely a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, like he is a top 2 quarterback in the league. Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, I think that if someone was in a coma for all of Gen 9 and then woke up and found out Zamazenta was one of the best restricted Pokemon, I think they'd have a pretty similar reaction.
They would be Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, and Kirk Cousins, and none of those guys would be on the list for your comatose patients.
Sorry,
NFL quarterbacks 5 years.
Kirk Cousins is a top 3 quarterback.
No, he's not that good, but he's just relevant in the league still.
Oh, okay.
And that would have been far exceeded expectations.
I was gonna say I do not. Okay, that one would have surprised me even more. I'd believe it, but it takes some convincing.
Like a top quarterback this year.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold was also like really, really good this year. Just kind of I don't know. Like as I said during the intro, it is out of nowhere. Like I'm not gonna hold his time on the Jets against him because I really don't want to hold anybody's quality of play while a member of the New York Jets against them. Like that franchise is just cursed by God. It's just, yeah.
Roger
says Sam is built like a linebacker, 100%.
Yeah, he is.
And so is Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next up, we're going to compare all of your favorite support Pokemon to offensive linemen, and we'll see how far we get.
Incineroar is Trent Williams. Oh no, Incineroar is Penny Sewell.
Let's see who's Laramie Tunsil.
So true.
Who's draft stock tanked because of it. Okay. Yeah. Moving on from this bit, we got the next restricted on the list. We got Eternatus. And let me tell you, I have.
How it's pronounced?
I've
always said Eternatus. Yeah.
Eternatus.
It's like eternity. It's Eternatus.
Sure, I guess that's fair.
Tomato. Let's move on.
Again, like I said, my pronunciation of Pokemon is very frequently wrong.
Here's the thing, like, the canonical pronunciation of Ferrothorn is Ferrothorn, which is just objectively wrong because the root word is Ferris.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So,
the canon pronunciations are not the gospel. They are a suggestion, and we can choose to ignore it.
Sure. Yeah. Anyways, Eternatus. That's still not. This does not roll off the tongue the same way Eternatus does. I don't know.
I disagree.
Eternatus.
Eternatus rolls off way better than Eternatus. Like it just maybe it's an accent thing. I don't know.
Maybe. Eternatus is maybe the single most forgettable final boss in any Pokemon game ever. It was not involved in the story at all. It like kind of just popped out of nowhere after like you beat the real big bad boss, the guy with the funny haircut.
Yeah. To be fair, the plot of Sword and Shield kind of popped out of nowhere. Like it just kind of materialized right before the champion fight.
Right, and then he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay, I guess I won't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, you got this big bad guy who actually turns into a giant hand, and you would think that's such a cool like thing to fight, except actually, it wasn't, because you had a Zacian and a Zamazenta on the field at the same time. So it was a really, really easy fight because it gave you all the tools to beat it right before you fought it.
You didn't even control the Zacian or Zamazenta. Like you just did nothing that fight, and like the dogs controlled by the game just carried it.
Anyways, yeah, and then you couldn't even use this like super powerful form in competition. It's a one-off appearance, and so now they gave you the base form Pokemon that is just bad. It's never been good. It saw some play on ladder with as like a cosmic power user in a type of gameplay that isn't really feasible in tournament because of the in-game timer, but saw play on Pokemon Showdown because it didn't have a timer, and even then it was never very good. John Hu did top cut a regional with it, just clicking Dynamax Cannon, but that's John Hu. I don't think anyone else has ever even thought about using this Pokemon really. Also, fun fact, I found this out while researching this for this video. Did you know that you cannot encore Dynamax Cannon?
Because it has the Dynamax flag for whatever reason.
Because it has the word Max in its name, and it's just I think it's a regex search for.
Is that actually how they flag it?
Sure.
That would not surprise me, given how these games work.
I think that's it. I think it's anyway. So yeah, you cannot encore Dynamax Cannon because it is a max move, and you can't encore max moves. So anyways, it continues to be bad. It has not seen any play in Regulation G. And we can do the comparison, but also, do you guys want to hear my theory about how they could have fixed Sword and Shield and made Eternatus like super memorable and like one of the best bosses of all time?
Go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
What you got?
Great. I'm glad. I think I've told Nick this one already. But I really
heard it before, but yeah, go ahead.
so I think that they should have made Eternatus the final boss of the Crown Tundra DLC, and they should have put Calyrex Shadow and Calyrex Ice in the main storyline. I think that, first off, Calyrex is an evil Pokemon. I mean, I'm going to talk about this more on the Calyrex slides, but Calyrex, like, literally, like, mind controls your friend and blackmails you into helping it take control of a village. Like, they make it a sympathetic character, but it is, like, undoubtedly evil. Like, it is the plot of, like, a bad, like, horror story.
The plot is you are helping like a psychic deer do a coup.
Right. This is like, if you made that the bad guy in the plot of an actual Pokemon story, that would be one of the best Pokemon in-game stories and like one of the best villains instead of the totally forgettable Chairman Rose, right? Like that would be an awesome villain. And then you have Zacian, which you could tweak the stats a little bit, right? Zacian could be made to outspec Calyrex Shadow, so you have an advantage when you fight this like crazy strong Calyrex Shadow boss. And Zamazenta is like naturally good into Calyrex Ice as well because it gets the defense boost. And so you can't beat this guy, and then all of a sudden you get Zacian or Zamazenta, and it's like the perfect counter to these ultra powerful Calyrex forms that are the big bad guy in the story, right? It would have lined up perfectly, and it actually would have been a reasonably challenging boss fight potentially, right? So I think that like would have lined up quite well. Yes, and also, as mentioned in chat, it is also evil in VGC, which is just a bonus. But then also, right, on top of that, the Crown Tundra, like I said, they botched it by trying to make Calyrex Shadow, but Calyrex is a sympathetic figure. But also the Dynamax raids, if you remember that, you go to the Dynamax raids, you do one with Suicune in it, and then you forget about it, and you never have to go back there again. Like, it's just totally optional. It's just like a way to shoehorn all these legendary Pokemon in the game, and there's really no prize for completing it, right?
I am still mad at them for at the end of each one, like you fight each legendary. They didn't do remixes of any existing legendary themes, which are some of the best themes of the game. It's literally only the generic like final Dynamax Raid Den track. Like the only legendaries that got remixes that gem were the Reggies, who already have like 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, and which was like also a different subplot in Crown Tundra that was, that was more reasonable.
Mm.
But look, hear me out. What if instead of making Eternatus the big bad guy in the main story, they actually made it so at the end of you beat all the Dynamax raids and they're like, oh shit, there's one more Dynamax raid that you got to deal with, and it's the biggest and baddest enemy of them all. And instead, and you think, oh, and you find it out, and it's like, oh, it's Eternatus. It's not too bad. And it sort of has the PLA twist where you fight it, and it's the base form, and it kind of sucks. But then, all of a sudden, it transforms into the giant hand. And it's like, it's this crazy Dynamax raid boss. And it would be the perfect ending for the last Dynamax raid that you have to complete as like a secret final boss to the story. It would be the most memorable final boss in maybe any Pokemon game that like I can think of. It is a nice little callback to the hand in Smash Bros. Melee, which as a kid is like one of the craziest, like, oh, I just have to fight all these characters, that's so cool, and then you have to fight a massive hand, and this is like the same type of vibe, where it's like, it totally surprises you, and it's totally out of the blue, and maybe you have to bring your friends along from like the main storyline to beat this giant hand guy out of nowhere. I think it would have been such a cool twist, and it would have made it one of the like most memorable legendary Pokemon boss fights at the end of the game. And instead, they like just totally, I don't know, I feel like they ruined both Calyrex's story and Eternatus' story in Sword and Shield, and just made them both super forgettable.
It would have been really nice if we got a game with like the graphical quality of Sword and Shield merged with the plot quality of Scarlet and Violet.
Yep.
I realize that's just kind of black and white too, but it's
yeah. I mean, that is the best game they put out, probably overall. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's like, it's definitely like it's one, and then like you pick 2 of like, if you're including spin-offs like the Gen 4 Mystery Dungeon games, original Black and White, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, etc., to fill out your top 3.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my one hot take about what they messed up in Sword and Shield in the main story, and how they could have made Eternatus really cool. I also think they should have just given us the hand form and like maybe nerfed it a little bit and like made it actually viable.
They would have had to nerf it a lot. Like, does it have a base stat below 200 in any stat?
I don't know.
I don't think so. It has all the stats. Eternamax guy.
How do I even find his stats?
I'm going to the Showdown Builder and just going to...
Let's look it up. 255 base HP. Oh my god, okay. This might not have been... it might have been okay. They didn't have to nerf it too much.
It doesn't die. Like, that's the thing. It gets recovered. It
doesn't die.
Like,
okay, yeah. That's fair.
Like, it's actually stall in VGC. Like, it gets perfectly accurate toxic, and it gets recover. You cannot damage this.
Okay, you're right. No, we could not have a base 1125 restricted Pokemon, but certainly, what is it actually? It's 690, but it's just super sub-optimized. You could make it a 780 Pokemon and it'd be fine. You could, it'd be okay. They need to give it a little bit of a boost. You couldn't have base 1125. That one would not be okay.
It has way too many stats.
Anyways, I think that Eternatus, like I said at this very start, most forgettable and one of the most disappointing final bosses in all of Pokemon history. So let's hear, with all of that build up, let's hear what your comparison to NFL quarterbacks is.
So this is perhaps a bit of slander of this guy, because like his good moments were better than Eternatus's good moments, but like Eternatus had a good rookie generation in essence. Like it was usable in Gen 8. It had its moments, it had some good teams, and now it's just not good. Like unusable, not good. And that's CJ Stroud, who the Texans went 3-13-1 the previous year. They drafted him 2nd overall. They went 10-7. They won a playoff game, and then they just crashed out of the playoffs immediately. This year's Texans are 9-7. So, like, you look at the record, it looks pretty much the same. He's played a lot worse, like a lot worse this year. And that's despite, like, granted, all of his wide receivers have missed time, but like even in the few games where he had all 3 of Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell on the field, like that offense is just really underperforming.
Yeah. Um, like there's some tools there for Eternatus to maybe be good eventually, but it's just like uh it needs to figure some stuff out before it'll really take off. And yeah, Stroud's in the same boat. Also, Stroud uh went to Ohio State, which is pretty much the same
The
stuff that
the
Chairman Rose
worst
was
thing you
trying
can
to pull off.
do.
Like they both just have a lot of evil in their past. But uh, despite having like all of the stats, all of the power on their side, they still lost when it counted to Michigan. Um, and I think that's just a perfect comparison. Eternatus could never beat Sasha Nerzama, and Stroud went 0-2 against Michigan. Got to work that one in there.
Okay,
Will.
okay. This might not age well if Ohio State wins the national title, but they did lose to Michigan, which is really what counts.
Yeah, that's really what counts. Like
Yeah.
like if they
That's
there
what
is
their fan base thinks counts. Like
there is a world where they finish top 4 in the college football playoff and still fire their head coach because they lost to Michigan.
it's really, really funny. And the further Ohio State goes in the playoff, the funnier it gets.
Mm-hmm. My college football hot take was that we should have had an 18 playoff because Ohio State losing to Michigan should disqualify them from making the playoffs. And if we had 5 auto bids and 3 at larges, they would have been ninth and they would have missed the playoffs. Were they one of the 8 best teams? Absolutely. But, if you lose to Michigan, you shouldn't make the playoffs. I'm sorry. That's just how it is.
I contend if it were Team 8, they would have put them in over Penn State or Notre Dame.
They probably would have. But
They
also,
probably would have.
if you lose to Northern Illinois, you probably shouldn't make the playoffs. I'm sorry. Like,
It's going to be really funny if Notre Dame wins and that's their only loss.
oh, that'd be great. It wouldn't be great because it's Notre Dame, but like it would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
Completely
Like
agreed.
the debate between Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State.
Notre Dame is one of the less evil teams left in the playoffs.
I'm a Purdue alum, so I cannot root for Notre Dame. I'm sorry, but nah, it would be. I know Michigan and Notre Dame don't love each other either. So, but I guess it's better than Ohio State. No,
Yeah, no, I'm pretty chill with Penn State. They can win.
yeah.
I'm chill with Penn State. Basically, my entire family went to Penn State. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I really wish we had a debate between the SMU Alabama debate was just like I do not care. Neither of these teams are any good.
you know what Alabama should have done is not lost to both of Vandy and Oklahoma. You could have lost to one and still made it in. Can't do both.
They weren't good. They also lost to
Yep.
Michigan.
They did also lose to Michigan.
Whereas the debate between
But if I'm
Ohio
understanding my discourse correctly, Michigan should have been in the playoffs, is what we're learning.
It's true.
they shouldn't have lost to Washington. Lost to Washington. Right. I think
Michigan lost a lot of teams this year. Let's go into it.
yeah, no, there are 12 good teams. I'm sorry, and I think the debate between Notre Dame, Penn State, and Ohio State, and who would have made the playoffs, and that would have been better than any discourse we had about the playoffs the entire year. Like that would have been amazing. I would have lived for that. So, yeah. That's my college football hot take. I will shoehorn my college football hot take because Nails did his.
Oh, absolutely.
We all have college football hot takes.
We're 2.5 hours deep into this podcast.
My college football hot take is one day somebody will win the Virginia governorship on a single issue platform of imprisoning Justin Fuente for what he did to the Virginia Tech football program. That somebody might be me.
All right, we got Jeremy Gross 2026, 2028. I don't know whether that's
I'm eligible. I don't know.
All right. So with that, I totally forgotten the discourse about CJ Stroud. But
rookie year, big fall off this year. He's got tools. We'll see if it works.
All right.
There's no real teams in his division, so he'll keep making the playoffs year in and year out.
Which honestly kind of feels generous for Eternatus, which is it's really, really bad. But yeah, I mean,
I agree. I think this is Stroud slander, but like it did kind of have results its rookie year, and then hasn't since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think Eternatus is like completely unviable. It's just not that good.
Yeah.
It's like okay. it's consistently like it's a really solid singles mon and singles Ubers.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Because it's got bulk, it's got recovery, it's got the poison
Yeah.
type, like, and it's fast.
Yeah.
yeah, no, like
Mhm.
it's got some stuff that can it's got like a reasonable kit and it's got stats that can hang with the big boys.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Just um, it's like almost a modernized form of Ho-Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that.
That's a good comp.
Um, yeah,
And then
so
they,
it could do something, and it's just hanging around until then.
yeah, yeah. I can see it. It does, it does. No, its typing is very good, and I do enjoy when they make restricteds with. Actually, no, this guy's a dragon type. Please stop making every restricted a dragon or a psychic type. Every time you do not one of those, it's super cool. Like,
At least
Yep.
this one's dragon poison. Like, that's
but yeah,
something interesting.
but the poison typing is quite cool.
They
So I
could have
do
made it not
appreciate
a
that.
dragon type. Yeah,
Yeah, they could have made it poison.
fairy.
Poison. Yeah, I was about. Yeah, fairy is kind of the space type. Poison fairy would be sick.
It would have been cool.
Yeah,
All right. Next up, we got Calyrex Shadow. And so, unlike all the other ones in the past where they've been two forms but one Pokemon, I think we have to do Calyrex Shadow and Calyrex Ice separately because they are both so different in many ways, and they are both so strong. Unlike Kyurem and Necrozma, where they kind of sucked. Calyrex Shadow and Calyrex Ice both are very very good. I shouldn't have to explain that, but it also, in my opinion, the single most evil restricted Pokemon. I mean, it's literally like a ghost. I talked about how the plot of Calyrex is that this town is doing totally okay. Calyrex is pissed off. They're doing okay without him. So it mind controls your friend, blackmails you into helping him. By the way, you met this guy's daughter. You're like friends with this guy's daughter, and also that his brother is in prison for being the bad guy. So like his daughter has nowhere else to go. So like they're really blackmailing you. And so you got to go out there and you got to enslave his ghost horse, who is just out there living his best undead life, right? And then this cartoonishly evil figure is free to subjugate the town people in the Crown Tundra and also every VGC player for the rest of our lives. Legitimately, it is some anime villain shit. And he's portrayed as the hero in the story, which makes absolutely no sense to me. And of course, a now banned player won the World Championships with it in 2022, which I think really drives home the point that this is an evil Pokemon. It won the North American International Championships as well, which, not everyone who used Calyrex Shadow is evil, just to be clear. And I say that with the next point being that that I got top 4 at Los Angeles Regionals with it, this in Regulation G, and of course it won Los Angeles Regionals in Regulation G. It also had quite a good finish at Worlds. It got top 16 at Worlds with Dendozo and Tatsugiri on his team, which also, kind of an evil combination, right? Like, it's friends with all the scumbags. Anyways, my point being, this Pokemon is evil. This Pokemon is just pure evil. It is like one of the most hated Pokemon of all time, even when it's like kind of mediocre, right? Like, it's honestly not all that good this format. It's maybe the third or fourth best restricted Pokemon in this format. But everyone still hates it anyways, and it is still pretty evil anyways. It's still very format warping. It's still centralizing. I understand why people hate it. I kind of hate it too. And anyways, Calyrex, very like the embodiment of evil is my point, which is the entire point of my comparison. It's a Sean Watson. It's fast. It's powerful. It's a total asshole. I don't think I need to elaborate too much. What do you think?
So that is an NFL take from somebody who has not watched the NFL since 2019.
Yep.
Here's the
100%.
problem. Here's the problem with Deshaun Watson. Now he sucks. Like that undersells it. Like, he had one of the worst quarterback seasons in history this year. Like, one of the worst total EPA margins ever, and like he suffered a season-ending injury week 6. Like, in 6 games, he posted like one of the worst negative WAR seasons ever. It's insane. So, completely different take. This Pokemon is fast, it's strong, it's always a threat whenever it's on the field. It can reach crazy power levels with the right supporting cast. It can and will win the game on its own. Its color scheme is even black and purple. It's Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, my biggest disagreement with your takes. Like, Deshaun sucks at football too much for this.
Some
Yeah,
might say
so-
that Calric Shadow was also not very good at VGC this year, so I think that comparison might still stand.
That's true. Some people have been saying things like that, pretty eloquently as well. So I'm gonna like try to combine the two takes. Like, as mentioned, Deshaun is evil, uh, but he's not very good. Lamar does not seem to be evil, like from everything we've seen. But stylistically, CSR and Lamar are like one and the same. So what if we had a quarterback who played like Lamar Jackson but was also evil? I got Mike Vick.
I don't think we have Vic on this slide,
We
but
don't
yeah,
have him on the slide, but he's in the notes, and it just came to me that Michael Vick actually is just CSR.
yeah, it's Lamar brackets evil. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see it. I can see it.
Um,
I do like the Michael Vick comparison. I will say, Michael Vick, I feel a little bad calling him evil because from all I've heard, he has apologized. He has spent his time in jail. He has more or less atoned, and is doing his best to live his best life and to be trying to be a good person now. But yes, I understand where that's coming from totally.
there you go.
we got one in.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we got the next up, Calyrex Ice. And so all the story stuff I said about Calyrex Ice, Calyrex Shadow is also applicable for Calyrex Ice, except like, I don't know. I feel like the Ghost Horse just kind of looks way more evil than the Ice Horse. The Ice Horse is like kind of badass, and way more thematically appropriate for the Crown Tundra. Historically, Calyrex Ice was good in single restricted on Trick Room teams, mostly in Dynamax format. It did see some play, but didn't see a ton of play. It was good in 2022 with Palkia and Reshiram, like we talked about. Paul Chua used it to get top 4 at Worlds. There was also a Groudon Calyrex Ice team that picked up towards the end of the format that Alex, Justin, and I used at the World Championships. And I don't think anyone actually did well with that team at the World Championships, but it did win the London Open that year. Ben Fox took our team and won the London Open with it. In Regulation G, it got second at the World Championships, which at that point, it got second to the World Championships. It got second at Japan Nationals, and it won the North American International Championships with Patrick Connors, which, by the way, is its first and only major win, despite being like one of the best Pokemon in 2022 and 2024.
Really surprising to me.
It has only ever won one major, which was NAIC. It has multiple slots in top cut of basically every major. It feels like it's so consistent in 2022, 2024, but never won a regional. It won a special event. It did win an Internats. So, Stephen A. Smith, you can craft whatever narrative you want from that. But I figure, I do think this Pokemon is evil, but it's like less evil, but it's still not great. So if I think Calyrex Shadow is Sean Watson, then I'm comparing Calyrex Ice to the big, slow, and bulky and slightly less evil version of Calyrex Shadow, which makes him Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, we had someone in the chat call it. Yep.
Yeah. Jacob got it.
Yeah, still kind of evil, and the archetype matches perfectly. Capable of taking over a game, capable of playing a more sporty style. Just impossible to take down.
And even like the only one major win also, because like he was in the AFC with Tom Brady for his entire career, and I think he has 2 Super Bowl wins, but still.
Yeah. In terms of skill level, I guess it's reasonably comparable. I honestly like Calyrex Ice.
Yeah, he was very, very good.
He was very, very good.
Yeah.
Calyrex Ice might be better, honestly. Like it might be.
Yeah.
I think it has the staying power to stick around, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens with in the future. But that's the one thing that is I don't like about this comp is that Cali Ice has not had a full career, whereas Ben Roethlisberger, we've seen his entire career play out, and so that is a little different. But yeah, it's I'm glad I nailed this comp, and I definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see Cali Ice like becoming terrible is the thing, and like that's kind of what it would take to lose this comp.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, and I see someone put in the notes Paul Chua equals Mike Tomlin.
It sounds like something I would have written.
That's definitely something. That wasn't part of my write-up. That's definitely something you wrote.
I don't remember why I wrote this. Yeah, that just kind of slotted in there. Oh no, it's Palcho. Like it's the type of teams he runs. It's just really boring Pokemon. Mike Tomlin is going to play boring, defensively sound football. He's going to show up in the playoffs every single year. Paul's going to show up and cut every year, um, and he's going to carry like sometimes relatively uninspired teams a lot further than they should be
Yeah.
carried
Mhm.
Mhm.
just by playing extraordinarily fundamentally sound.
Yep.
I like it. All right, moving on. We are done with Generation 8, and we are going on to Generation 9. This generation, of course, these restricteds have only been legal for one format, which is Regulation G. And, this generation, instead of doing the thing where they make the two restricteds, like, diametrically opposed, have them counterbalance each other, like Kyogre and Groudon, or Xerneas and Yveltal, they just made them attack on entirely different axes this time. Which means that Koraidon gets to compete with Groudon and Kyogre, and of course its single biggest counter, which is a Pelipper. It gets to compete with that bird. Meanwhile, Miraidon gets to compete with Rillaboom and Indeedee, which I think is hardly fair. But I digress. Koraidon has a Pelipper problem. Pelipper won NAIC. It got second at Worlds. It has made Koraidon's life miserable in Regulation G. At points in the format where Pelipper is less common, Koraidon has been quite good. It did get 2 slots in top 8 at Los Angeles Regionals with Rajan and Colin. It won Hong Kong Nationals. It won the Puerto Rico special event. And it, I think, got top 32 at the World Championships with his best finish. So it's definitely a viable restricted. You should expect to see it around. It's a bit of a meta call. It's only gotten this one format. But what do you guys think? Who do you think Koraidon is?
So the thing about Koraidon is Koraidon's sort of not the MVP of his own teams, right? Like the past paradoxes are like better in a lot of cases than the future paradoxes, and like there are a lot of really good mons that become even better when the sun is up. You know, you got Fluttermane. I mean, really, you got Flutter, you got Chiyu, you got Raging Bolt. Like those are the stars of that team, especially when sun is up. Which isn't to say Koraidon is bad. Like Koraidon is still good, but he is not like the driving force that makes the offense click. And so that's Brock Purdy, who was the last pick of the 2022 NFL draft. Started as the third stringer for the Niners. Trey Lance made it 70 minutes into the season, broke his leg. Jimmy Garoppolo made it another 11 weeks, also suffered a season-ending injury. Out comes Mr. Irrelevant to play quarterback, and he beats Tom Brady in his first start. How does he do it? He's not the force that makes the offense run. He is, Christian McCaffrey is his Fluttermane, Deebo Samuel's his Chiyu, George Kittle is his Raging Bolt. You don't need to throw downfield. You just need to throw like accurately. You need to get the ball into your playmakers' hands and let the real damage dealers do their thing.
Yep. I agree with this. Said it perfectly.
Yeah. I will say I am a Brock Purdy hater. He did go to Iowa State, which means I have to hate him, which is also part of the comp because I am also a Koraidon hater. I definitely do not respect Koraidon, and I did beat both the Koraidons in cut at Los Angeles Regionals, so eat that, Rajan.
Mm-hmm. The Purdy narratives are kind of weird because he got insanely overhyped last year and is now like very underhyped this year. Like there was a point last year where he was like the MVP favorite for a couple weeks, and like he is not the MVP of his own NFL team.
Yeah. He just puts his teammates in positions to succeed, and like he is a force multiplier. Like
Yeah,
you can't say that he isn't.
He's a force multiplier in a good offensive scheme. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, Kyle Shanahan might be Koraidon, but we're doing quarterbacks, and
that
so
is true. The scheme could be Koraidon. Yeah. Did Kyle Shanahan ever play, and did he play quarterback?
I honestly don't know.
Probably not. Like he was OC in Washington, like when he was young enough to be playing. So, no, only a coach.
That's interesting. That is such a weird career trajectory. Either it's interesting that He
It's a nepotism trajectory. Mike Shanahan was the head coach of the
uh
Redskins at the time.
right.
But
Yep.
he's also good enough to like, yeah, everyone who has ever watched an NFL game has seen the graphic of what Washington's 2013 offensive staff was. Like we had Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, like a bunch of like offensive genius head coaches all in the same offensive staff. That team went 3-13. Ask me what being a Washington fan has been like before this year.
Was the offense good?
No, it was not.
That's
That was
tough.
the year after RG3 blew out his knee and then like started trying to be a quarterback that he fundamentally isn't.
mhm.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
That is so tough.
I see Alex in chat saying I think he's Philip Rivers. Uh, yeah, you want to extrapolate on that, Alex? Noted baseball fan, Alex Underhill. Um, so next time, Alex, you got to host the every I don't even know what else we can compare to
Every paradox mon is a starting pitcher. I don't know.
every paradox pond is a starting pitcher. I like it, Alex. You got to host that one. You, Donald, and Jeremy will make it happen.
Yeah, we need to get Gavin in that too. Yeah.
he's Greg Maddox. There we go. All right.
What is a pitcher ever? There are enough baseball players.
That stream might last a little too long. We got to rapid fire those. Yeah. Anyways, we are down to our last two restricted Pokemon. We're almost wrapped up. We almost got through all of them. And in contrast to Koraidon, Miraidon is absolutely broken. It is so Koraidon. You see, Koraidon has to use this terrestrialization mechanic to get the same type attack bonus on the type that its ability boosts, which is of course fire. So it almost always is a Terra Fire Pokemon, clicking Flare Blitz or Flame Charge. Whereas Miraidon gets that boost naturally, and then also gets an additional boost on top of that when it clicks its Terra. It won the first regional of Reg G. Eat that, Rajan. It also won the World Championships in Reg G as well. I don't know if I need to elaborate. This is probably one of the best Pokemon ever, and will probably continue to be one of the best Pokemon ever, despite only having one format under its belt. Who's your comp?
All right, so it's surprising in retrospect, but like people kind of slept on Miraidon just a little bit at the start of Reg G. And then, of course, it won a regional, hasn't looked back since. Similarly, some people were hesitant to take this guy early in the draft over the other quarterback options available. You know, they said he has too many weaknesses in his game. He can't throw over the middle. He can't hit ground types. He's too small. He runs into too many big hits. To these people, we say, check the scoreboard. So it took a couple weeks of going as a passer, and then statement win on national TV, put this offense on the radar, haven't looked back since. So let's set the scene here. It's week 3. It's Monday Night Football. Whole country's watching. Up 31-26, 2:15 left in the fourth quarter. 3rd and 7 from the Cincinnati 28. One score game. You cannot take a sack because you at least need to kick a field goal here. So, you force Joe Burrow to have to throw a touchdown to tie, which he very well might. So, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. The Bengals answer with cover 0 blitz. There are 7 guys blocking. There are 8 guys rushing the quarterback. There is going to be a free rusher. If you're an overmatched rookie here, this is where you throw a pick, you take a sack, you might lose the game here. Jaden Daniels does not do this. Jaden Daniels gets the snap, looks up to his first read, and there is a safety 2 yards in front of him. In half a second, he sets, he throws a dime to Terry McLaurin in the back of the end zone. Touchdown, Commanders win. We have not looked back since. Watching this man play football has changed my life. I cannot. It has been so awful watching this team my entire life. I have never seen an 11-win football team at any level my entire life until last Sunday when this guy changed it in his first year. And the sky's the limit at this point. Like, this is his rookie year. The defense isn't even complete. We kind of only have like 1.5 wide receivers, and we're doing this. Like, I don't want to jinx it, but my God, y'all know it. The only, I could go for an hour, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, Miraidon's the clear rookie of the year in terms of restricteds, and Jaden Daniels is running away with that award. He is the definition of an electric player in the league. He makes every game that he's in about him, and then he wins it.
Yep.
The
so many game-winning drives this year. It's truly something to behold.
Um, yeah, he's just he is the show. Um,
Yes, he is.
he
He
is the main
is.
event. We're all going to be watching
He set
Maridon for the
he set
foreseeable
the,
future.
yeah, he set the rookie quarterback rushing record last Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
If it had arrived in time, I would be wearing a Jaden Daniels jersey right now.
yeah. No, it seems pretty perfect to me. Yeah, I guess any other thoughts about Maridon or Jaden Daniels? I'll use. I thought we were going to talk about this for
Jeremy has
longer.
so many different thoughts about Jaden Daniels.
I can talk about more plays if you want. So, Bears game. This is week 7, I think. So the Bears have gone up late. The Bears are 4-2. Like they've actually kind of looked good this so far. This is the play that broke them. So like Jaden Daniels is essentially like playing with a broken rib in this game, and so like with like no time on the clock, like gets the offense to the 50-yard line, gets them to Hail Mary range, drops back. Bears rush 3, I think. Like scrambles right, drops back, scrambles left, runs up into it, steps forward, heaves the Hail Mary to the end zone. Nobody is covering the back tip guy, Noah Brown, who was just like standing alone in the end zone. The ball gets tipped up out of the scrum into his hands. Commanders walk-off win. Place goes absolutely wild. Broke the Chicago Bears. They have not won a game since the week before that game, and that was 10 weeks ago. Let's see. Eagles game 2 weeks ago, 6 seconds on the clock. The offense turned the ball over 5 times in that game. We still won. Authored 2 incredible drives at the end of the Falcons game last week to make the playoffs, both to take the lead late in the game, and then after the Falcons tied it because our defense is not good, like basically burned the entire overtime clock just getting down the field, and then we scored a touchdown to walk it off.
This
My
entire
God, this guy is electric, just incredible. Like I am proud to have been a truther since day one. Like there was legitimate debate on if we should take Drake May or Jaden Daniels. From day 0, it's like there are receipts in Tub Sports Channel and other sports servers I'm in where I'm like, Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the draft. I want him at number 2. I don't want anybody else. My God, it's just man.
see that entire spiel is the exact same vibes as Rajan's team report after he won Indianapolis Regionals.
It really is.
It's the same vibes. So that must be the comp is perfect. I agree.
Yes.
And then I'm cutting you off there. That was your Jaden Daniels minute. Last but not least, we got Terapagos. This turtle. This is the last restricted and the latest restricted into the almanac of Pokemon, aka the Pokédex. This is the Pokemon that has 3 forms, one of which is purely for anime reasons, as far as I can tell. I don't know why they added that turtle form. The second form has...
You know how Xerneas has the inactive form? Where it technically has another form, but it's only ever when it's not in battle, so you never see it.
Yep. It's the don't mess up your team sheet form, is what it is. So the second form has super multi-scale because they decided they needed a multi-scale that beats Surging Strikes. And then the big guy gets the Zygarde ability that gets a huge ass HP boost, but also it clears terrain and weather. The turtle is very confusing. It is literally a Yu-Gi-Oh card worth of mechanics. I have an 8-minute video where I talk about its mechanics. And I missed some of them despite talking for 8 minutes about all the relevant mechanics. People in the comments were pointing out mechanics that I forgot to talk about, which says a lot about how much you need to know to play a format with this Pokemon. It is very, very confusing. It's also good because it got 2 different abilities that are both very good. And it has Terra Starstorm, that is a move that does 2 different things depending on its form, and they are both strong. There is the Specs version of it that Nails has, of course, been championing. That did very well. It got second at the North American Championships with Aurelion. There's the Combined version that has also done really well. That got top 8 at the World Championships. And there's the Power Herb Meteor Beam version that also won Japan Nationals. So it's got so many different things it can do on top of all the different confusing mechanics that go around it. That's Terapagos. It is one of the top 5 restricted Pokemon in this format right now, and I'm very interested to see it moving forward because we presumably will not have terrestrialization next generation. So I don't know how they're going to do what they're going to do with Terapagos and whether it's going to be good or not. But at least for right now, it is really, really good. And yeah, what are your how are you guys comparing it to an NFL QB?
Yeah, so Terapagos has a bunch of really confusing mechanics. There's a lot to keep track of while you're playing with it or playing against it, which is honestly, it's just very similar to a modern NFL passing game. And Terapagos is the pocket passer. So we've got three forms. The baby form, we've got the the guy who hasn't seen action yet. He's currently injured, but has a lot of potential. Personally, I think he's going to be great, but just has not really shown up yet. So, baby Terapagos is JJ McCarthy.
Okay.
Um, uh, just has like a good situation in Minnesota and like has all the tools to succeed, just hasn't done it yet.
Yeah.
Middle form Tropicos, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, except minus the ninja, the Teenage Mutant Turtle, because he changes form, so he's a mutant and he's teenage and he's a turtle. Like, it's a pretty good comp. Yeah, the comp that I've got is the it's what's his face,
It's Herbert.
Justin Herbert.
Mhm.
He has a lack of weapons right now, but he's like an elite game manager. He never turns the ball over. He's really sound defensively, and he kind of lets his defense do the job for him. But like he can set up and still deal a lot of damage if given time.
Lack of
Um,
weapons is slight Lad McConkey slander, but boy, does
he
he only has one wide receiver.
He has one weapon, just like Turtle has Baby Starstorm.
Mhm.
I mean that.
He has one target.
Yeah. And then if we give Terapagos multiple targets, and like just turn them all the way on, we have to sacrifice the defensive ability you have.
We
But
sure do.
um, uh, let me tell you, the offense takes off. We get a lot more power, and we get the ability to just target the opponent's weakness. If they're doing anything unsound, we're going to punish them. Big Turtle is Joe Burrow. Just the idealized modern NFL pocket passer is going to slice and dice, can go deep on you, can uh, it just is capable of pulling off a rainbow of strategies and making all of them look good.
He's very close this year to I think a 5,000-yard, 45 touchdown season if he has a really good game this coming week.
In
And
my
yet,
opinion, he's the MVP,
yeah,
but
I agree.
um,
He's probably the MVP, but the thing is, the Bengals are going to miss the playoffs. So
yeah, he just suffers from a lack of team support.
that defense is bad, real bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
So does the offensive line. Really, he gets sacked a lot.
Turtle does need a lot of support.
Yes, he does. He does need support. He needs an offensive line.
Yeah.
Incineroar is your offensive lineman.
That's true. And Urshifu
Joe
is the
Burrow
defensive
is
lineman.
Turtle. They just got all the defensive options and the ability to protect, and he just solves every problem with more damage. There is no bad matchup for the offense, and there is no good matchup for the defense.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious because I feel like Turtle is more versatile than any other restricted Pokemon than we've ever had, I think. And I didn't really see that element of it in the comp. But I mean, I guess
it's
that's how you got three different comps, right?
It's in the target, kind of. Mm-hmm.
All three of these guys have some wheels. Like,
Can run. They just usually don't have to, and they're not like they're mobile, but they're not runners. Like they're not mobile like Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen are, but they can run if they need to. They can.
And you can put a Torn on a Turtle team, and it's going to go pretty well. Like, you can play fast offense and just like Joe Burrow had a 50-yard touchdown run this season.
I was literally about to say that Joe Burrow has a 45-yard rushing touchdown this season.
If there's room there, they can take off. They just aren't relying on it. and it's not like an every down part of their game, but they can take
No,
us there.
it's an option.
All right.
Like they'll absolutely like cut and run for 5 yards if they don't have any open options.
Yep.
I dig it. All right, and I saw a Dak Prescott suggestion in chat. I guess, like I said, if y'all have suggestions in chat,
Dak would fit in this archetype. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of in the middle turtle slot where he has one target at CD Lamb.
Yeah. I think that I was trying to lean into the defensive aspects of Middle Turtles game, and Dak is a bit more reckless.
Last year, Dak would have worked for that because the Cowboys' defense was good, and now it's not.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dak throws a bit too many picks.
He does. Yeah, he does.
So
he's a little more gunslingery. Like he's kind of.
Yeah.
I think he was our Lunala before we went to Stafford.
Yeah.
but
like if we're just doing Reg G, Dak is Reg G Groudon.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we were
because he's
with no history. Yeah, I think that's.
But yeah, it doesn't fit the rest of his career arc.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nick did have an entire comparison ready for just Reg G restricteds, but I'm sorry, I did not want to subjugate you guys to talking about how good Zekrom and Reshiram were in Reg G, and Mewtwo was in Reg G. I guess we did that anyways, but that would have been. But the quarterback comparisons would have been excellent. That one part would have been a lot more fun.
It was also entirely modern quarterbacks. And so I had I had every Reg G restricted and every modern quarterback.
And yeah, there are
Some
about 30,
stretches.
right? There's like 26 restricted, something like 25 restricted, and there's about 30 quarterbacks in the league, so it works out pretty well. But yeah, that is the last comparison. We got through all 26, I think 26 slides, 26 restricted Pokemon that have been legal throughout VGC's history, and we've given each and every one of them one, if not multiple, quarterback comparisons. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're watching on Twitch, I really appreciate you guys sticking around the entire time. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching the entire thing. Jeremy. Sorry, it's late.
We're very similar.
Yeah. Jeremy, Nails.
Than me.
Any final thoughts? Any more comparisons? Anything that we wanted to add to this 3-hour stream that we did?
I don't know. I could go for another hour on Jaden Daniels if you want me to.
You really could.
Yeah, that's the thing is like the fun part about this is that it's just an excuse to talk about sports, right? Like we do this all the time anyways. Like we can
yeah, we do.
So yeah, it's easy to go on, but you know what, we can do that and call some other time where you pen your Jaden Daniels love letter.
You just like look at the Tub Sports channel. There's a lot of it. I think I have posted the "Thank you for changing my life." I'm literally just Jaden Daniels like 5 times.
Yep. But yeah, that is going to. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just like if this is content that you guys enjoy, like we've got a lot of sports fans in the Tub, so we can bring this back.
We can do baseball. I might be the only hockey guy, but I can think of something.
Yeah, let us know if you enjoy this. I enjoy doing these like longer streams where we have fun comparisons. I feel like part of why I like doing these streams is that you could watch this 6 months from now and it still like makes sense, you know? Maybe not all the Reg G comparisons would make perfect sense, but like it's just fun content that is pretty evergreen, and so I'm always happy to do streams like this. Yeah, if you guys enjoy this, let me know in the comments. Give us suggestions if you have other ideas for how we can compare other Pokemon things to other sports things or other things in general. The original idea for this was actually every restricted is a pop star, which I ended up getting talked out of, but I thought that would have been fun because I thought Mewtwo was Eminem, and that's about as far as I got. It's like, all right. So yeah, let us know in the comments down below.
There just aren't enough pop stars. I feel like really notable ones. I think.
I don't think that's true. There's a lot of pop stars.
That's probably not true. I just don't know who they are.
Yeah, fair point. I don't know who they are.
You would not have been picked for this stream about pop stars. Would have had someone else. But yeah, all right. So that is going to wrap it up from us over here. Thank you all for watching again. And I'm going to send you over to Wally the Bandit, who is enjoying the last days of Regulation H. Aren't we all? But yeah, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Peace.
Everyone.